Welcome, everybody, to the April 2nd, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting. Please silence your cell phones, pagers, and other electronic communication devices. Agendas and speaker request forms are located at the back of the chambers. The commission utilizes speaker request forms. If you'd like to speak on an item, please complete the speaker request form located at the back of the shelves in the back of the commission chambers and return it to Commission Clerk Geraldine Sissick, located at the lower left side of the dais. At this time, I would ask Mr. Drews to do the moment of silence and reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Drews. Next on our agenda is the review and approval of the agenda.
So move.
Moved by Lassiter, seconded by Drews. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next, we have an executive proclamation for National Telecommunicators Week, April 14th through the 20th, 2024. I'll have Commissioner Laster read the proclamation, and then I'd ask Kevin to come up and say a few words, and then after that, we'll do a group photo. Mr. Laster.
Executive Proclamation, Pennington County, South Dakota Board of Commissioners. Whereas Pennington County recognizes the significance of the Emergency Communications Center to Pennington County and its citizens, and whereas the emergencies requiring police, fire, and emergency medical services can occur at any time without notice, and whereas prompt emergency response is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property, and whereas the safety of our police officers, deputies, firefighters, and paramedics is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained by public safety telecommunicators from citizens who report emergencies to the Pennington County Emergency Services Communications Center, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first contact our citizens have with emergency services, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers, deputies, firefighters, and paramedics by monitoring their activities by radio, relaying information, and ensuring their safety, and whereas public safety telecommunicators of the Pennington County Emergency Services Communications Center have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. And whereas public safety telecommunicators exhibit compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job each and every day, therefore, we, the Pennington County Board of Commissions, Pennington County, South Dakota, hereby proclaim April 14 through the 20th, 2024, to be National Public Safety Telecommunications Week in Pennington County to honor the Emergency Service Communications Center public safety telecommunicators whose diligence and professionalism continue to keep our community safe.
Thank you, Mr. Laster. Kevin?
Good morning, Commissioners. Kevin Carley, Director of Pennington County 911. Thank you for the proclamation. This week gives us an opportunity to shine the spotlight on our employees. They normally work behind the scenes. They don't get a lot of recognition from the public, just simply because they work inside the center. They answer the calls, but they're not necessarily outward-facing agencies. So they do a lot of good work. One of the things we like to say in the center is that our center is where every emergency response begins, and it's the truth. Every emergency response begins with a call into the 911 center, where our staff takes the information and gets it out in a timely manner. And they do great work. They're not always, we don't always get to spend time in the spotlight, and this 1 week allows us, it gives us the ability that we can do that. So we appreciate that very much. So.
Thank you, Kevin, and I too would like to thank them for their service. I mean, it's 365 days a week, 24/7, and also dealing with the public that are in emergency needs and probably, some situations that can be very stressful and impactful on the caller themselves. So I really appreciate what they do, and we value you very much.
Chair.
And then next, I'll go to the commission for comments. Ms. Hadcock.
So I appreciate this team. I visit them a lot behind the scenes in a good way, bring them lots of treats and stuff because they do have to work holidays and they do work 24/7. So, and I truly believe there's a single vital link to our public and to our officers and our communication for our emergency responders. So this team does a vital thing for our Pennington County area, and we couldn't do it without this team. So thank you for your service. Thank you for taking the time out and serving the public, which sometimes I know is not easy. So again, I believe you are compassionate, understanding, and you're very professional on those 911 calls, and we appreciate you very much.
Any other comments from the commission?
Sure.
Mr. Drews.
I just want to thank him for, you're very critical to the health and welfare of our communities. So I appreciate the time and effort that you've put into this for the training that you go through. Just thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskinek.
Kevin, I too just want to congratulate you and your team. You're kind of hidden behind the scenes, so we don't get to see you very much, but glad that you guys could make it today, and it was an excellent proclamation. Are you fully staffed now?
We're getting there. We're down 3 now.
Okay.
So we're getting there, yes.
Once again, I want to thank everybody for their service.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I would look for a motion.
Move approval.
Moved by Hadcock.
Second.
Seconded by Lassiter. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'd like to shake their hands and have a photo with them.
Thank you.
Have him come up here.
Yeah.
Probably just come on up here.
Yeah, they'll come up here. I think it's better if.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Somebody had to work on it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. How are you doing? Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for the text.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Somebody's got to pretend like we like each other.
Come on, girl.
Everybody is squeezed in here. He's taller, you're taller.
Yeah.
Tighten it up a little bit.
My hair might cover your face.
There you go. You're good. You're good. I really appreciate y'all.
This is the official one, so we need eyes open on this one. All right, thank you.
Brian, send that to the commission. Some of those photos, we never get to see them.
Not mine.
Somebody.
We can make sure. We'll make sure we do it.
Thank you for taking care of us.
Yeah, good job. That's right. Many hats. Good job. Congratulations. Good job. Congratulations. Congratulations. Good work.
I talked to Matt last night. We had
Thank you, folks.
Oh, really?
Next on our agenda, we have another executive proclamation, and this is for the National Work Zone Awareness Week, April 15th through the 19th, 2024. And I'll have Mr. Drews read it into the record, and then I'll recognize Highway Superintendent Joe Miller afterwards, and we'll do the same as we just did. Mr. Drews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whereas National Work Zone Awareness Week is an annual spring safety campaign held at the start of construction season to raise public awareness for work zones and those who work in them.
And whereas National Work Zone Awareness Week 2024 is taking place April 15th through the 19th to encourage safe driving through work zones. And whereas the 2024 National Work Zone Awareness Week theme is Work Zones Are Temporary. Actions behind the wheel can last forever. And whereas motorists are encouraged to slow down to posted speed limits, eliminate distractions while driving, and be watchful for roadway workers, their equipment, and vehicles on the side of the road in work zones. And whereas, according to the National Work Zone Safety Information Clearinghouse, in 2021, there were 874 fatal crashes and 956 fatalities in U.S. work zones. And whereas Pennington County is dedicated to advocating for safe driving and maintaining work zone safety for both the road worker and the traveling public, and therefore be it resolved that the Pennington County Board of Commissioners declares the week of April 15th through April 19th, 2024 to be National Work Zone Awareness Week in Pennington County and encourage caution in work zones for the safety of all. Dated this day of 2024 and signed by Commission Chairman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mr. Durs. Joe Miller.
Good morning, Commission. Joe Miller, Pennington County Highway Superintendent. This proclamation is brought to you just to bring awareness to work zone safety. It's one of the most dangerous jobs out there working. I mean, you got these tablets and phones. Everybody's distracted nowadays, it seems like, and especially in those work zones, we want people to pay attention. These guys are some of the people that do the work on the road, patching the potholes, chip sealing our roads, gravel maintenance, cutting our trees, do all sorts of things to keep the traveling public safe, not only the citizens that live here, but the millions of people that come here to visit every single year. So we just thought it would be fitting to recognize these guys this year. We did actually have an incident in one of our work zones this last year, so definitely brought this to the forefront of our attention. And with that, I'd like to recognize those guys.
Thanks. Joe, I will say we really appreciate your guys looking out for each other's back when you're out there, because that's what it takes, is the teamwork of seeing what's happened, because with all the construction we have and the distractions, you know, your team look out for each other's, and we really appreciate that.
Here.
So, Ms. Hadcock.
Bottom line here is for the road workers, make sure you slow down, get off your tablets, get off your cell phones, because the safety of our men and women out there that are working for us on these roads, their life depends on it. So I agree with this, and I think it's pretty awesome that you brought this forward, because it makes a huge difference for the public as well, that we can put this out there and that we do care about our people. So thank you guys for what you do for us and women.
Any further comments?
As you can see, they can definitely be seen when they're out there. and we couldn't do our jobs without them, so.
I'd look for a
Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and move to approve Chair's signature on the executive proclamation declaring April 15th through the 19th, 2024 as National Work Zone Awareness Week.
Second.
Moved by Roskinek, seconded by Drews. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, guys. And then you, what?
Thank you.
Just by the time you guys get out of
You could be. Yep. Whatever I hear. There you go.
That's one of those glow in the dark pictures.
Bill, it's your turn to try to keep your eyes open. You know you're off center. Do you want to scoot over, get underneath the commission sign just a little bit? Come on.
Wow.
Say when,
There's a
Ryan.
A
perfectionist.
little further. A little further. A little further. That's good, right there. Squeeze in. You know, Pauline works for me, so she's used to just manhandling us into the right spot, so. All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joe? Thanks. Appreciate doing that.
Congratulations. Well done. Congratulations. Congratulations. Love the hat, man. Congratulations.
Next, that brings us up to item 7, which is the 2024 Board of Equalization Oaths of Office. That's going to be given by Auditor Cindy Moeller. We're going to do things a little different this year. We're going to start from my left and read it individually and then sign it. So, Mr. Laster, you're up first.
I like that idea.
All right, so tell me how you want me to do this. Just read it and go.
We
Sure.
still need to stand up and read it.
That'd
All right.
probably be nice. Stand up and raise your hand.
I was going to say, and does that
Like
pick up my
official.
voice?
Yeah.
Okay. I, Travis Lassiter, a member of the Board of Equalization for Pennington County in the state of South Dakota for the year 2024, depose and say that I will fairly and impartially perform the duties as a member of the Board of Equalization for the county and state, that I will endeavor to equalize the assessment of all real property within the county, that I will seek to place upon the books of the tax jurisdiction within the county any property that may have been omitted by error or neglect of the assessor or Board of Equalization. I will faithfully and impartially perform all other acts enjoined on me by law, to the end that all assessments within the above county may be complete and just and equal as between the property holders.
I'll sign that for me, please.
Okay?
I, Gary Drews, a member of the Board of Equalization for Pennington County in the state of South Dakota, for the year 2024, depose and say that I will fairly and impartially perform the duties as a member of the Board of Equalization for the county and state, that I will endeavor to equalize the assessment of all real property within the county, that I will seek to place upon the books of the tax jurisdiction within the county any property that may have been omitted by error or neglect of the assessor or Board of Equalization. I will faithfully and impartially perform all other acts enjoined on me by law, to the end that all assessments within the above county may be complete and just and equal as between the property holders.
I, Lloyd LaCroix, a member of the Board of Equalization for Pennington County in the state of South Dakota, for the year 2024, depose and say that I will fairly and impartially perform the duties as a member of the Board of Equalization for the county and state, that I will endeavor to equalize an assessment of all real property within the county, that I will seek to place upon the books of the tax jurisdiction within the county any property that may have been omitted by error or neglect of the assessor or the Board of Equalization. I will faithfully and impartially perform all the acts enjoined on me by law, to the end that all assessments within the above county may be complete and just and equal as between the property holders.
I, Ron Roskinick, a member of the Board of Equalization for Pennington County in the state of South Dakota, for the year 2024, depose and say that I will fairly and impartially perform the duties as a member of the Board of Equalization for the county and state, that I will endeavor to equalize the assessment of all real property within the county, that I will seek a place upon the books of the tax jurisdiction within the county any property that may have been omitted by error or neglect of the assessor or Board of Equalization. I will fairly and impartially perform all other acts enjoined on me by law, to the end that all assessments within Pennington County may be complete and just and equal between the property holders.
Oh, I hate this. I, Deb Hadcock, a member of the Board of Equalization of Pennington County in the state of South Dakota, for the year of 2024, dispose and say that I will fairly and impartially perform the duties as a member of the Board of Equalization for the county and the state, that I will endeavor to equalize the assessment of all real property within the county, that I will seek to place upon the books of the tax jurisdiction within the county any property that may have been omitted by error or neglect of the assessor or board of equalization. I will faithfully and impartially perform all other acts enjoined on me by law, to the end and all assessments within the above county may be complete and just and equal as between the property holders. Amen.
I need a new one.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy.
Next, that brings us to our consent agenda. And I'll recognize Commission Coordinator Joan Martin.
Good morning, Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine items. The consent agenda is acted on by one motion of the Board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. The consent agenda contains the following items. Item 8, minutes from the regular meeting of March 19th, 2024. Item 9, to rescind the motion acknowledging the filing of petitions as applications for incorporation of the proposed Pactola Estates Road District by the voters within the proposed district boundaries as approved by the Board of Commissioners meeting on March 19th, 2024, as submitted by the Auditor's Office. Item 10, to acknowledge the filing of petitions as application for incorporation of the proposed Pactola Heights Road District by the voters within the proposed district boundaries as submitted by the Auditor's Office. Item 11, approval of the updated memorandum of agreement covering metropolitan planning within the Rapid City Metropolitan Planning Area as submitted by the Commission Office. Item 12, approval of the Adopt a Highway application for a portion of Deerfield Road by Western Sky Vacation Homes, LLC, as submitted by Highway. And item 13, to declare surplus for the purpose of decommission one 2024 International 7600 truck, county asset number 27519, as submitted by Highway.
Just a little correction, I think that was 2004 International.
Thank you, Lloyd.
At this time, is there any members of the public who wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, at this time, is there any commissioners who wish to remove any items from the consent agenda for further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskinek.
move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I have a motion by Roskinek, seconded by Laster to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next, this brings us up to items from the sheriff, employee pay corrections. I'll recognize Mr. Sheriff Brian Mueller.
Commission, Brian Mueller, Pennington County Sheriff. I bring before you today pay corrections for 3 of our staff. These were mistakes that I had made on reclassifications and a promotion. One was recent, 2 were in 2023. The staff has recently brought those to our attention. We did some research and we had made errors on where they fell when we did the reclassifications and the promotions. And I think the memo lays it out pretty good as to what the details are and what motion we're looking for today to correct those.
Thank you, Brian. Is there any questions for Brian?
Chairman.
Ms. Hadcock.
I think the main thing is this could have went to payroll, but I appreciate you bringing this up front because those are changes in employee corrections. So a lot of times they just go right to payroll on correction, but bringing this forward is good for transparency for the public, which I appreciate, Brian. I also believe, again, that we need training on what belongs on the agenda and what can be done that has been done like in payroll and stuff before. Because on these, like I said, Brian, I believe that pay corrections are a little bit different than wage exceptions. So thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
I'd move to approve Sergeant Anthony White to DVM L3, Step 3, $34.56 an hour on the wage scale effective March 17, 2024, and issue back pay in the amount of $655.20.
Second.
Moved by Drews, seconded by Laster. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Laster.
move to approve Correctional Officer 1 Anthony Combs to DBM LC1, Step 6, 27.16 an hour on the wage scale effective March 17, 2024, and issue back pay in the amount of $1,357.87.
Second.
Moved by Laster, seconded by Drews. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskinek.
move to approve Deputy Sheriff 1 Brandon Spence to DBM L1 Step 3, $28.11 an hour on the wage scale effective March 17th, 2024, and issue back pay in the amount of $484.90.
Moved by Roskinek,
Second.
seconded by Travis Laster. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks,
Much
Brian.
appreciated. Thank you.
Next, this brings us up to item number 15, which is items from equalizations, and then I will recognize Director Shannon Rittenberger.
Good morning, Commissioners. So every year, I come here and talk about assessed values just prior to Board of Equalization. I've got a PowerPoint presentation here that we'll walk through. I want to say that a chunk of this is going to be same old for all of you. It is what we covered at the most recent meeting we had in Hill City, so I wanted to go over it again so it gives the commissioners that weren't there an idea of what we did. And it's still good information for that one or two people that are watching this on TV or the internet. So I'm gonna go through it. Bear with me. I'm gonna go through it kind of quickly because you've all heard this. And then at the end, I've got some new information that'll be a little bit more interesting for you.
Chair,
Ms. Hadcock.
I appreciate you repeating this every year because I think it's more than one or two. I hear a lot when you put your stuff in the paper, Shannon. It's pretty, a lot of comments. How about that? So when people don't know about their property taxes, I also refer them back to this meeting. So believe it or not, there's more than one or two if you look on the online, and repeating it for people, including us commissioners. So we appreciate you. So thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Roskinek.
So one of the things you'll notice on today's presentation that they haven't been on previous would be we're using an actual property that I own in Rochford as an example to show the different tax districts. And if I recall, there's 207 tax districts in Pennington County.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll get into it. So we start with just an overview of the process. The law requires that we mail assessment notices by March 1st, and in South Dakota, your property is assessed at market value. So that notice that you got just prior to March 1st tells you what your property would sell for, at least what we think it could sell for. That's different than taxable value, and we don't know what taxes are going to be, but we mail an assessment notice saying this is what we think the value of your property is. We do that. There's an appeal process, which we're heading into, and then there's the exemptions. Every year, the county commission approves or denies all applications for exemptions from property taxes. That'll happen at the Board of Equalization process. Once all of that's done, we have set the total taxable valuation that we can take tax revenue from. Once we've set the assessment, gone through the appeal process, and decided what's exempt, we now know the total taxable valuation. And then every taxing entity, as Commissioner Roskinek says, there's, I think, 207, I got it on another slide, all of those taxing entities have to meet, hold a public meeting, and decide how much tax revenue they want to collect as part of their budget. And that has to be done by October 1st. They typically meet through the summer. The county and the city have multiple meetings to set those levy requests. Once that's done, we know how much tax revenue is going to be collected from the available taxable valuation. The county auditor does the math. That's where we get the levy or many levies. And then we print and mail a tax bill where taxes will be paid next year. In South Dakota, we pay taxes the year after the assessment. So here's a slide where, 207 taxing entities in Pennington County. That changes every year. There'll be another road district or a fire ambulance district or something like that. So that changes some, but all of those entities, the county, the cities, the townships, schools, road districts, ambulance districts, on and on and on, all of those taxing entities collect tax revenue from whatever properties are within their district. And all of those taxing entities hold public meetings, and they set their budget. Now, maybe not all of their budget comes from property taxes, but what part of it does, they have to submit a levy request to the county auditor and say, this is how much property tax we want collected. We've talked many times about those caps. All of those taxing entities can't just say, we're going to take this much tax revenue this year. There's certain limits on what they can collect. They can only collect 3% or the consumer price index, whichever's less, more than they had last year. They can also increase their budget by the amount of taxes that are paid by new growth, new property that was added to the tax roll. And then there's the opt-out. They can opt out for a certain amount of money for a certain period of time for a specific reason. And we do have some tax districts that have opted out. So those are the limits all of those taxing entities are bound by. They're all in state statute. Here is the tax formulas where we talk about how the levy is set. Assessed value times the taxable factor gives us taxable value. Taxable value is not the same as assessed value. In Pennington County, taxable value runs about 87% of assessed value. The budget request, that's where the taxing entities meet. They decide this is how much taxes we want to take from the available taxable valuation. That levy on the other side of that equal sign, that is just a mathematical factor. A lot of times we hear political people say that we lowered the levy, we increased the levy, we set the levy. The levy is just a mathematical factor. The boards of all the taxing entities set the budget request. The county assessor reports the total taxable valuation, and the auditor just calculates that levy. The final formula is taxable value times the levy equals the amount of taxes that your property will pay. And I put some reasonable numbers into that formula. If a taxing entity decides that we want to take $1 million in tax revenue and the total taxable valuation is $70 million, the levy is 0.014286. The $1 million is set by the taxing entity. The total taxable valuation is reported by the county assessor. The levy is just a mathematical factor. Nobody ever sets that 0.014. That's just the factor that gives us $1 million out of $7 million in taxable valuation. There's a bunch of comments here that I've said a lot. Taxes increase when budgets increase. If the county assessor leaves the assessment flat, I take a year off and we do absolutely nothing, and your assessment notice this year and everybody's has the exact same number as it did last year, your taxes are going to still go up as long as all of the taxing entities raise their budgets and collect more tax revenue. The levy just goes up to provide more tax revenue. If all of those taxing entities decide we got plenty of money, we can go another year with the exact same amount of money, and the county assessor doubles everybody's assessment. The levy is just cut in half to make sure that the taxing entities get the same amount of revenue that they had last year. A misconception that we hear a lot is when assessed values go up, there's more money flows into the county and the city and the school, and that's not true. They set their budgets, they collect whatever budget they set, regardless of what happens with the assessments. Here is the example that Commissioner Ross Connect was mentioning about tax bill. This isn't a real tax bill. It's his property in Rochford. It does not have a tax district for the city because Rochford's not an organized township, doesn't collect taxes. So the only difference between this and a lot of people's tax bill is there'd be a line here for the city. But the tax bill on everybody's property will tell you the levy and how much tax you're paying to all of those taxing entities. And we walked through this at the public meeting we had there in Hill City. We like to point out that most of your taxes go to the school. Approximately 2/3 of them go to the school. Then the next tier would be the city or the county, and then all of the various smaller taxing districts. The tax bills in South Dakota will also identify the amount of taxes that are being attributed to the opt-out. In this case, the Rochford Fire District has an opt-out. The regular tax revenue to the fire district would be $130 on this property, plus another $24 due to the opt-out. So the public can see how much taxes is going to every taxing entity and how much are attributed to the opt-out. You'll see a value at the top of your tax bill, that is taxable value. The assessed value of this property would have been higher than that. We have a couple of pie charts that show on this property, on that home we looked at, the large green area, that's how much of that tax bill goes to the school. This up here is how much goes to the county, and then all of those other taxing entities. We threw in a pie chart about the county's budget, so people could see just the county's budget, how much goes to each category of the budget. And we had a question at that meeting in Hill City. Of the county's budget of $125 million, how much of that comes from property tax? And I think the county auditor said just under 50%. I want to say 46%, but something near 46% of the budget is from property taxes. The county gets revenue from grants, from license plate stickers, copies from the Register of Deeds, and many other sources. And that would be typical for the city. The city gets revenue from sales taxes, and most of the taxing entities will get revenue from another source. This chart shows what happened with assessed values this year in Pennington County. We've experienced some huge increases in real estate values and assessments in Pennington County over the last several years. Our market is still going up, but our market hasn't gone up as much as it did for the previous years. The average change in assessments this last year for 2024 was about 4.1%, an increase of 4.1% over last year. But I broke it down into market areas. We split the county up into market areas and then smaller neighborhoods that make up market areas. Every market area, every neighborhood changes value differently every year. We've all heard that saying that in real estate, the three most important considerations are location, location, and location. Well, that's true, and when we're appraising property, we have to be aware of location. The real estate market changes differently depending on location. I've told people that a home in Wall is worth quite a bit more than it was 5 years ago. But a home in the Black Hills and the Pine Trees is worth a whole lot more than it was a few years ago. Commercial property changes value differently. Even from one end of Rapid City to the other, we see changes in our real estate market. We are still seeing increases in our market, and the bigger increases are at the west end. You notice on this chart, the neighborhood that increased, or the market area that increased the most, was the western end of the county. That's still going up more than anywhere else in Pennington County, and I don't think that surprises anybody. The market is changing bigger wherever we have the more aesthetic, scenic locations. There was a comment made at the meeting about another county that changes assessments a certain percentage across the board on every property. That is poor assessment practices, and most, if not all, of the counties in South Dakota don't do that. We want every property to be at market value. We don't apply a blanket change to every property because our market reacts differently depending on location. We talked about the elderly assessment freeze in Hill City, and we've done that the last several years. This is a big issue, and I'll show you how big. But we went over the criteria. The deadline for this is passed. We'll have another application next year. But to apply for the elderly assessment freeze, property owner has to be 65 years old or disabled, has to live in a home valued less than about $345,000, with an income of a couple of about $52,000. I wanted to point out to the commissioners here that last year, the average sale price of a home in Pennington County was $362,000. The median sale price of a home in Pennington County was $319,000. The restriction on the home value for the elderly assessment freeze is right at the average value home in Pennington County. So this is not an unreasonably low number. The income limit for a couple is just under $52,000. Evidently, our legislature has some sympathy for older or disabled people to a point. Not everybody that's 65 years old living in $1 million home or something like that. There are restrictions on the value of the home, but it's a reasonable limit. That's the average valued home in Pennington County right now. And our legislature just last year changed the law, so the value of that home is now tied to an index factor and will change with inflation. It'll be a different number next year, and so will those income limits. We'll be looking at different income limits. So the county treasurer tells people, if you don't think you qualify this year, look at it next year, because those numbers will change.
Shannon, do you know what that index factor is that would change?
No, I don't remember. I want to say consumer price index, but I don't know.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Mr.
So while we're on the slide, Shannon, when the home valued at 345, 340, that value, is that the assessed value, or somebody didn't agree with the assessed value and they went out and had an individual appraisal? Would that value have any credence?
The law says a home valued at that or less. It doesn't say assessed at that. It says a home valued at that. So I think our assessed value is an accurate representation of value. If a property owner thinks differently, I guess we got an argument. The law isn't so specific as to say assessed at that.
Okay, that was my question.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lasker.
follow up on that. So when you say assessed value, is assessed and appraised the same or different, or how do they correlate?
Assessed is a term in property taxes. In South Dakota, we assess property at market value. And appraisal is defined as an estimate of value. In South Dakota, they're the same. In some states, the property is appraised at market value and assessed at a percentage of market value. In South Dakota, our assessment and our appraised value are the same thing.
So someone could have a home assessed or appraised at X amount of dollars, but if it's assessed and then you're removing the factor, it would be taxed at a lower rate.
Taxable value is a percentage of assessed value. Yeah, and in Pennington County, it's always lower.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so here's where we get out of the stuff that you've all heard before. I wanted to show you some new information, and I wanted to go over some of these exemptions and show you what's happened in the last few years. The elderly assessment freeze. This gives you a history of how many applications we've had and the amount of value that is exempted just for the elderly assessment freeze. Because that value of the home was increased and the income limits are increased, and I think because we've done a good job of advertising the elderly assessment freeze, we have seen the applications increase substantially. The county treasurer is estimating about 725 people qualify for the elderly assessment freeze this year. She is still reviewing all of those applications, so we don't know what that number is. It's just an estimate. But you can see we were in the mid 300s. It went up to 449, and now we're looking at over 700. And that's about $68 million of property value that will be exempted for that exemption. The disabled veteran, we've seen an increase in that. There is no income limit to qualify for this, and then there's no limit on the value of the home to qualify. The property owner just has to be permanently and totally disabled as defined by the VA, and we've seen those applications increase substantially. And there's $88 million of property that is exempted for the disabled veteran. Paraplegic veteran, we only have 11 properties that qualify for that, but it's just over $3 million of property that's exempt. And I threw in a historical moratorium here on the properties in Rapid City. We have 9 of them, just over $4 million. If we add all of those up, we've got $172 million of valuation that is exempted just for these exemptions. Now, that's $172 million of value that isn't paying taxes. Of course, that's a tax shift to everybody else. Everybody else makes up for that. Any exemption is always a tax shift to everybody else.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
Shannon, can you go back to the elderly assessment freeze? I'm trying to make these numbers relate to one another. So 725 applications, but the value reduction is $68 million. How do those two numbers relate?
The way the elderly assessment freeze works, your property is still assessed at market value, but you pay taxes on whatever it was assessed when you turned 65. It doesn't do you much good if you're 66 years old and you're paying taxes on whatever it was assessed last year. But if you're 96 years old, you're paying taxes on whatever the assessment was 30 years previous. So especially when our market goes up, the value that you pay taxes on is an older value, and that's the frozen. Your taxes are not frozen. The assessment is frozen at whatever it was when you turned 65. So last year, I know that we had a value reduction of almost $42 million for that freeze. I took an average and calculated the average based on 725 properties, and I come up with an estimate of $68 million.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Roskinek.
So Shannon, if somebody wants to apply for that, would they do it? What office would they do that? Your office or the auditors or treasurer?
The law says that the treasurer's office determines whether a property qualifies for that, or a property owner qualifies for that. The application can be found at her office or my office or South Dakota Department of Revenue website. You can download and print the application. But it has to be returned to the treasurer's office by April 1st. The law even says the treasurer's office will help you fill out the application if you got questions.
Thank you.
I love to point out things where the law says somebody else has to do something. Too many times it's the county assessor. But you can still get an application from our office for all of those, even though they are returned back to the treasurer. You can still get the application anyways from my office. So I want to talk about measure of accuracy. How do we know whether the assessments in a county are accurate or not? And the measure of accuracy of any mass appraisal is a sale ratio analysis. Assessed value divided by sale price. If a home is assessed at $90,000 and sells for $100,000, then it's assessed at 90% of sale price, which doesn't tell us much on one property, but when we do that 1,500 times for every sale that takes place in the county, and we calculate that ratio, we get a good idea of how accurate our overall assessment is. We calculate a median ratio. That's our median level of assessment. And this year, for 2024, we're estimating about 97%. Overall, all 1,500 sales were 97% of market value.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lester.
just, Shannon, if you don't mind for a second, what happens if the assessed value is higher than the sale price?
It doesn't matter. Then that ratio would be 110. Okay, whatever. We calculate that ratio regardless. On 1,500 sales, we got all kinds of ratios. There's always properties that sell high, and there's properties that sell low. For stuff that we can't measure or stuff that we don't know. If there's something about your home that we didn't know, it's either makes it better than we think it is or worse, then our value is going to be off. So that ratio will be off. If you're moving and you got a better paying job somewhere else and you got a nice home there and you want to leave, you put your house on the market, you take the first offer and leave. Maybe you sold it low, but you have personal motivations for getting out of town. Well, that's a low sale. There's low sales, there are high sales. We measure that ratio on all of them. When I said one sale doesn't tell us much, it's only one piece of data. The more data we have, the more accurate that measurement is.
But what is it? How does it impact your office if that property sold for less? How do you have to come back and reconcile that for the assessment purposes? Or do you just say that's an outlier, even though it may be assessed higher, or do you have to bring the assessment down lower?
We don't have to do anything. But what we do is our appraisers will verify these sales. They'll look at every sale and they'll look for, is it actually an open market sale? Was this a legitimate sale? They're verifying that, and then they're going out for looking at things we don't know. If we measure a sale at 95%, it's a quick glance at that, and unless something stands out, they move on to the next one. If that ratio is 250%, then they're looking, something's odd here. Something's either odd with that sale or something's odd with our data, and they'll dig into it. And if it's a 250% sale, then it's assessed well over what it sold. We've even called realtors because we drove by the property and we can't see anything. We'll call a realtor and say, "What's up? We think this is a $300,000 house and it sold for 120." And the realtor might tell us something we didn't know, and we can make that change in our data. We'll knock on the door and ask to look at the property. There's obviously something we don't know. Maybe we find out, hey, this is a situation. The seller dumped it, got out of town. Our data's good. It's just an outlier sale. So we look for those things. We don't always, we don't assess at sale price, so we don't change the value. But if we've got data wrong, we definitely want to correct that.
Chair,
Ms. Hadcock.
how many people do we have coming up, or how many applied this year for equalization hearings?
Appeals, I just asked Joe this morning. We are at about 600 appeals, but that includes all of them at the local boards. I don't know how many of those we'll have at county board.
Okay, and how many of those did you reconcile with?
Appraisers are still working on them.
Okay, because I remember we had like 1,000 something, and then with help from your equalization department and your team up there, you went out, went above and beyond on some of those and cut them down to pretty low factors. So that's why I was asking.
Okay, so I got to say that our office does not change a value once assessment notices are mailed.
Right.
We will not change a value, but we meet with every property owner and we talk to them. And if we find some data we got wrong that makes a difference in the assessment, we will recommend the board to make those changes.
Okay, I apologize.
And then the property owner can decide whether he wants to appear in front of the board or not.
Well, just because of last year, you did that, and
And
there were
we
a lot of
always do.
people that did not come in because they were appeased by
Yep.
your team working with them, so I appreciate that.
So 600 appeals, you will not see 600 people.
Right.
Because we do that. If they're happy with our recommendation, why should they show to a meeting?
Right, and
I-
that's my point, is that by the time you're done, there's a lot less, because you guys, like I said, work
Yes.
with the people and communicate with them, because some of them you can't find, or,
We
at a
talk
certain
to every property owner that'll talk to us.
Right.
Yeah, there'll be one or two that don't give us a phone number, and we have to mail a letter and we don't hear anything. But
Right.
that doesn't happen very much. And we get some of them that just won't talk to us, but that doesn't happen very much. We talk to almost every property owner.
I appreciate the work you guys do.
Now, I keep threatening to bring all 600 of them in here, and you can hold 6 or 7 days of meetings and hear from everybody, but hasn't happened yet.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskinek.
Shannon, you might explain to the commission, when you get a sale, you don't necessarily use that sale. There's certain criteria that makes that sale invalid to be used in the database, such as between relatives, address sale. I think there used to be 10 criteria, if I recall.
There are. The state has specific criteria. Any appraiser doing an appraisal is always looking at only open market sales. If a couple divorces, there is a deed that transfers it from both of them to her or him. There's no money that changes hands. That's not a sale of a home. That's not an open market transaction. I buy a home from my grandmother. I get a really good deal on it, or I don't know, maybe she stiffs me and I pay too much. But regardless, that was a sale between grandma and me, and it didn't go on the open market. It wasn't advertised. So sales like that, or transfers of ownership like that, we don't use those in our assessment process, and no appraiser uses those in appraisal. And that's why we spent some time with that verification process, to make sure that the sales we're using actually represent market value.
One of the questions in Hill City was, how do you treat it, the sale of a nightly rental or vacation home rental? That sale would probably involve the real estate, the going concern, and possibly they have to be furnished to make money. So that was one of the questions. How does a sale like that get treated?
So we had a discussion. It was more than a question. We had a short discussion there about that. Sale of a home. I don't know whether it's a vacation home rental or not. So it's a sale of a home to me. And every property owner, for the most part, in Pennington County, has the option to rent their home as a vacation home rental or live in it as an owner-occupied property. So a sale of a home to me is a sale of a home. If the owner chooses to rent it, okay. He has the same choice to live in it, and if it goes up for sale, there'll be buyers that are looking at it, and they're going to have different motivations, but it's still a sale of a home, and that's all I care about. Now, it was mentioned, what if it comes fully furnished? If it's a vacation home, and it is sold as a going concern and includes all of the furniture, well, there could be some value in that furniture that makes that sale price higher than the typical sale of a home, because most homes you buy aren't fully furnished. And well, we need to know that if that happens. And we've got the certificate of real estate value, where the seller reports the sale price and that personal property if it was included in the sale. We find adjustments in commercial properties and ag properties when they sell, because there sometimes are personal property involved with them. In residential properties, we just don't see that personal property, except for maybe a washer or dryer or something, which really doesn't make much difference in the price. So going back to our sale ratio analysis, I want to point out that the South Dakota Department of Revenue audits every county, including Pennington County, every year. The Department of Revenue does that sale ratio analysis. And they report the results of that to the county commission, so the commissioners can see the report of that audit. There's also part of that audit that's the policies and procedures of the office, but a large part of it is the accuracy of our assessment. And in state law, there's only 2 criterias for accuracy of assessment. One is the median level of assessment has to be at least 85%. We're required by another statute to assess at full market value. but at least at 85%. And the other one is a coefficient of dispersion less than 25%. The COD is a measure of the spread. So when we do 1,500 sales, we calculate that sale ratio, assessed value divided by sale price on 1,500 of them. And we say the median ratio is 97%. The COD measures of all 1,500 sales, how close are they grouped around that 97%? We'd like a close grouping. We don't like something that looks like this. Okay, the COD measures that. A crude explanation of the COD is the median level of assessment is 97% of market value, give or take, plus or minus 25%, one way or the other. Well, that 25% is horrible, all right? But that's what's in the state statute. Pennington County is this year about 97%, and we tend to be between 96 and 98% of market value every year, and our COD this year is just under 13%. 25% is horrible. In the industry, a 13% COD is very good. Our state law says we have to be under 25%, and we are well under that. So we're going to be good with the accuracy of our assessment this year. We'll get our taxable factor from this audit. That's how that taxable factor is calculated. We haven't got it yet, but in another month or two, we'll have that report back. And as I said, the county commission, or anybody, I guess, could see the results of that audit every year. Are there any other questions?
Chairman,
Ms. Hadcock.
so how many property owners are there in Pennington County?
Property owners?
Yes.
So there are 54,000 approximately tax parcels.
Okay.
But that, property owners own more than one property.
Yep.
I actually had Joe run a calculation, and assuming a property owner is a couple or an individual,
Right.
I come up with something like 37 or 38,000 property owners
Yes,
that own those 54,000 tax parcels.
And it used to be 36, so I'm guessing he's pretty right. That was probably, 5 years ago or so,
Yep.
That's pretty amazing that there's, 111 in Pennington County people, and there's only 37 to 38,000 property owners
Well, some of those property owners, as I said, are couples.
or exempt
Yeah.
other property. Are there 54,000, does that include the exempt properties?
Yes.
And stuff too? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Taxable parcels is just over, or right at about 50,000. It's just under or just over 50,000 taxable parcels.
Okay, so the taxable parcels are 50,000 and the 4,000 is more the exempted.
Yes,
Okay.
churches and charities and things like that.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Shannon? Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate the time to come here and do this.
I like hearing it every year.
And it's on your website also,
I should put this one on our website. The Hill City presentation is on our website. I'll have Joe attach this one as well.
Yep, appreciate that.
But go to Pennington County Commission website and you can find the recording of this in another day or so.
Yep. Thank you, Shannon. Next, that brings us up to items number 16. This is items from the Highway Department, and I'll recognize Superintendent Joe Miller.
Good morning, Commission. I'm Joe Miller, Pennington County Highway Superintendent. Item A in front of you is 2024 Bridge Improvement Grant Agreements with the state of South Dakota. Get this to where I can see it here. We applied for 6 bridges this year. We received 3 grants. Total, the first one for Norris Peak Road, I believe, Sean, is that the one on the north side of Norris? We're doing the south side, or south one on the south side of Norris Peak this year, closer to Highway 44. The one on Nemo Road is the one we received funds for this year in the amount of $344,600. One on Old Hill City Road in the amount of $222,400. One on Lower Spring Creek for $555,900. Happy to report that to date, the grant funding we've received from the big program is just a little under $4.1 million. So it was a very good decision to put the wheel tax on in 2020. We've reaped the benefits of that, not only in the funding from the taxpayers on the wheel tax, but both the money that we're getting back from the state as well. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lester.
Joe, you talked about 6 projects applied for, but we only received for 3. What were the other 3 that weren't?
I don't have that information. Sean, do you have? Come on.
Yep, to come up. John,
Chair.
we've got a question
Oh,
on the floor.
sorry. Sean knows.
You remember off the top
Sean
of your head?
Smith, Pennington County Highway. Thunderhead Falls. Aside from that, I'm drawing a blank on the other 2.
Mr. Chair, then maybe
Ms.
just a
Glass.
follow-up. What's the impact if we don't move forward with those, or is that something we're going to have to do as a county, fund those, or are we going to just wait another year and apply in the future years? What's kind of the status?
Likely, what we'll do is we'll apply for those again in the following year. And if we don't get them again next year, then we'll apply for them again the third year with a plan if they're not funded to fund them with local dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hadcock.
I was just gonna make the motion. Motion is request to approve the bridge improvement grant agreements for project numbers BRO 805200024-2, PCN 09RG, Structure 52-319-268, BRO 805520024-3, PCN 09RH, Structure 52-314-432, and BRF 62200024-1, PCN 09R8, Structure 52-457-406.
Second.
I have a motion by Hadcock and a second by Roskinick. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Durs.
So Joe, on these 3 that have been approved, is that a 20% match on behalf of the county?
Yes, 20% match.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up, if I may, Chair.
Mr.
That's likely what we would probably do the following year is probably increase our match, which gives us more points, which puts us up to scale and makes us a little bit more competitive. And with the bridge inspections that are inspected every 2 years, we'll keep an eye on those structures to make sure they're still in good standing, so.
Thank you, Joe.
We do have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, construction change order, number 7.
Wow, excuse me. Item B, construction change order number 7 for the South Rochford Road reconstruction. So this change order is due to the delays in getting the contract signed and getting work started. Project was let, I believe, in March of last year, and project didn't start till close to after the 4th of July due to a number of different reasons. The state negotiated for us on to get that lower. Originally, the aggregate was coming from out of Cheyenne, so the local office, along with the peer office, negotiated with the contractor and found a comparable aggregate just north of the project site, which saved us several thousands of dollars. There's some other change orders. Mike, you happen to remember? Since he's here. Anyways, total contract change order for this one is $134,000. Of that, we are responsible for 25%, which equates to, I believe it was about $33,000. So.
Chair.
Ms. Hadcock.
So are we on the next one, or I apologize for the,
We're on the construction change order number 7, South
Yes.
Rochford Road.
sorry. So I was gonna ask Joe, how much do you have left in the state budget and how much do you have left in the county budget for Rochford Road?
With this project, nothing is coming out of our local budget. It's funded with an SIB loan, a state infrastructure bank loan from the state of South Dakota.
Thank you.
So currently, we're still about $342,000 under the contract bid amount. with all the change orders. We started the contract, started the project with about 750,000 under the contract bid price.
Right.
And that was due to the state's negotiation with the contractor on blasting was the other one, the other big factor, and then the different aggregate coming from the rhyolite pit just north of the project.
So would we start for the spending authority on this project?
I think it was $23 million. I don't remember the exact dollar figure, to be honest with you.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskinek.
I'll move to approve construction change order number 7 for the South Rochford Road reconstruction project in the amount of $134,127.
Second.
Moved by Roskinek, seconded by Drews. Any further discussion?
Chair, if I may.
Yep.
I think that we're requesting authorization for my signature on that change order, just to make sure that that wording's in there. I didn't hear that, so.
So, Mr. Roskinek,
Well, to me to add to that.
it's acceptable to, Mr. Drew, are you acceptable to add in the signature?
Correct. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
So, Joe, on this project, is the blasting completed now?
I don't believe so. No, there are some other areas that the blasting will have to take place this year once they're up there doing some stump removal and some grading and wasting of material currently, but the project wasn't supposed to get started until May 1st of this year, so.
Okay. Ice Canyon, though, that blasting is complete?
The first mile is complete. So from Rochford Road going south, the first mile is complete.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskinek.
but the South Rochford Road will be open throughout the summer to local traffic, just they have to put up with the construction.
That is correct. Yep. The South Rochford Road will be opened. It was closed last year to through traffic. It was only open to the local traffic, so it will be closed it will be open this year, excuse me, to all traffic, so.
I'm assuming with the closure of Highway 385, I think that's on May 20th, you're going to see more traffic on the Mystic Road and probably the South Rochford Road.
Yeah, it's a good possibility, I'm sure. I don't believe the state has a designated detour exactly penciled out. I haven't really followed the 385 project all that closely, but I would venture to guess we will see some increased traffic. What that traffic will be, I don't know.
Thank you.
So the motion on the floor is to approve the construction change order number 7 for South Rochford Road reconstruction project, the amount of $134,127, and allow the superintendent's signature. That's what you need?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
If I may, just answer Mr. Laster's question here on the previous item. Forest Road was one of the other ones, Thunderhead Falls. There were 2 on Thunderhead Falls, and then Highway 1416.
Those two
Those
bridges.
2 were on there, so,
Gotcha, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Next, we have items from Human Resources, and I'll recognize the Risk Manager, Walter McDuff. Welcome, Walter.
Morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Chair. Walter McDuff, Pennington County Risk Manager. Bruno, in case I have to talk to him, he's my surface dog. So what I'm in front of you guys today is to ask to stand up our threat management group. I would like to get them going, get us going, so we're able to create the bylaws to bring in front of you guys. With my memo, that pretty much explains everything that we're looking at for you guys to authorize us to do. So with that, I'll stand here for any questions.
Any questions for Walter? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
Move to approve the threat management group consisting of 1 member of the Sheriff's Office, Emergency Management, Fire, Dispatch, Human Resources, State's Attorney's Office, Buildings and Grounds, IT Department, and 1 county commissioner to establish operational bylaws and authorize the threat management group to develop and implement emergency action plans, threat determinations, and training once bylaws for the threat management group have been approved by the Board of Commissioners.
Moved by Drews,
Second.
seconded by Roskinek. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Laster.
just out of curiosity, are we going to get a list of those individuals before we move forward, or are we going to have to prove that list of individuals on there, or is each department going to choose who's going to be the
I
representative?
think those names will come forward.
Those names will come forward.
Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thanks, Walter.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next, that brings us up to item 18, items from information technology, and I'll recognize Director Lori Wagner.
Good morning, Commissioners. Lori Wager, Director of IT for Pennington County. You have in your packet a memo requesting the addition of a software engineer position in our department. This will not increase our FTEs. It has just come to our attention that the structure that we had previously wasn't really working for us, and we needed to have some area for our developers to grow to. So I'll stand for any questions.
Chair.
Ms. Hadcock.
So the DBM for the software engineer is C41, and so is for the project manager. Are they both the same step level?
When you say step,
Isn't it DBM C41 and then it's step 6, step 5, step 3?
that depends on who I put in there and what step I start them at. It's just a DBM 41.
Okay, so what I'm saying is the system engineer is a new title.
Yep.
It's a C41.
Yep.
You're starting it at 3032, and you said you're just basically not doing another FTE, so what's the?
A 3032 is just step 1.
Okay, and that's what you're gonna start them at, or you don't know?
I haven't assigned anybody to those positions.
Okay, but you already have someone for the FTE, so you won't be getting another FTE
No,
for this position?
no new FTEs.
Okay. Would have been nice to see who you're gonna put in that step.
I haven't made any decisions yet. I'm just starting this and trying to figure out the structure for our software developers.
Okay. So is this for the wage comparables and market analysis that's coming for the budget?
This has nothing to do with that. This is just something that we need to do in our department because we have no area for any developers to go. They start as a developer and there's no place for them to advance to. I had a project manager in there. The project manager piece of it wasn't working anymore. And so we chose to see if we could create this software engineer so that we could have an area for the developers to grow to.
Okay, and you don't know what that pay is at this time?
The step 1 is that, what did it say, 3032?
Right, but
That's
depending
step
when you hire them, so you said you would replace the DBM 41. Do you have someone in the software engineer position now?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
I move to approve the new position of software engineer at DBM C41, base pay $30.32 an hour, and to authorize human resources to update the position listing.
Moved by Drews,
Second.
seconded by Lassiter. Any further discussion?
Chair.
Ms. Hadcock.
Normally I'd approve this, Lori, but I'd like to know, I guess I'm not getting the numbers of where you're going on this on the 3032, if they're going to start at what pay, what benefits they have.
I don't have anything with that right now. All I'm doing is trying to create a position so that I can restructure my developer group.
Okay.
To a more accurate structure based on what it is right now. Like I said, the project manager position isn't working for us. So I'm working in that direction. If you'd like to step down sometime and discuss with me, I can sure.
Okay. I think this will go through today. I'll probably say no, but I will come down and see what you're doing, just so I know all the information before I vote on it.
Okay.
Appreciate it, Lori.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Approved with 1 no from Ms. Hadcock. Thanks, Lori. Next, we come to items from the building committee. And I'll recognize project manager Kevin Burton.
Good morning, Commissioners. Davis was going to present this item, but he's out on an appointment, so I got elected. So Kevin Burton, Construction Manager, Buildings and Grounds. As we purchase new buildings and we're moving staff and all of that, we need to rename those buildings. And the building committee had some recommendations that were presented last commission meeting. Those names would be 900 Concourse, which is the new administration building, will remain the Pennington County Administration Building. This building that we're in at 130 Kansas City Street, we're recommending that we rename that to the Pennington County Justice Center, as it'll hold attorneys and law enforcement from both Rapid City and Sheriff's Office. And then the 14 St. Joe, which is the bank across the street where Public Defender and Buildings and Grounds are moving to. The name recommendation was the Public Defender and Operations Building, so acronym of PDO.
Any questions for Kevin?
Mr. Chair.
The
naming was, we went through that process for maybe a couple of months. It was vetted pretty thoroughly, and when we got done, it was pretty much agreed on that these were probably the most appropriate names for these particular buildings involved.
Thank you, Mr. Roskinek. Any further questions?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
I would move to approve the naming of the following buildings: 900 Concourse, Pennington County Administration Building; 130 Kansas City Street, Old Administration Building, Pennington County Justice Center; 14 St. Joe, Pennington County Public Defender and Operations Building.
Any further discussion?
Here.
Oh, second, moved by Drews, seconded by Roskinek.
Correct.
Ms. Hadcock.
So on the Pennington County Administration Building, that's a no-brainer. Pennington County Justice Center. At that time, I know that the city and the county were supposed to both be in this building with the police officers and some of the sheriff. So I understood the Justice Center, meaning I thought we were going to call across the street the same thing or add to it. So to make 14 St. Joe a Public Defender and Operations Building, to me, if that changes, you're going to change the name, because the Public Defender, at this point, I don't think there's enough to fill that building with Public Defender stuff unless you add more of some of the Justice Center in there. So I'll be voting no today because I don't agree with the 14 St. Joe.
Okay, any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
I like the suggestions that were made, because it not only identifies what the building is, but the actual location of it. So I support this.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries with one no from Ms. Hadcock. Next, we come up to item B, recommendations for FMG engineering contract for geotechnical services.
So this is our first recommendation from the building committee, so there won't be a motion today. The soils engineering is very important for any new building. As we're going to develop and build a new jail facility, we need to really understand what the soils are. FMG has done a lot of work for us and in this downtown region, so they're extremely familiar with the soils and the type of landscaping that we're dealing with on this project. So they gave us a proposal that was well within the industry standard, and we like to hire them as a third party so that they're not influenced by the contractor or a design team, and they can give a third party recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. And this is just the first hearing on it, so it'll be coming back to our next meeting.
Correct.
Is there any questions for Kevin?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
So Kevin, I presume that when you're starting out a building like this, that's going to be added on to, as far as height is concerned in the future, that there's probably other criteria that goes into what that base actually is. Is that a lot more expensive in order to complete that process, or is that just same thing as what it would be if it was just basically a one-story building?
No, you'll need more structure underneath of a multi-story to support the weight and carry the load. But it's just a matter of how many piles you're driving and how deep they're going in the strategic locations where that structural load is. The structural engineer can't finish their calculations until they have that geo reporting back to know what our soils are and how much we actually have to go down. If we had bedrock at a very low range, then you don't have to drive the piles near as deep. But so there's all kinds of different philosophies or engineering criteria that come into play, and the soils engineering will give us those results so we know how to structurally support the entire structure. You can't add structural support after you already have a building in place. So it makes absolutely no sense to not prepare for the future. And then just mobilization for a machine to drive the piles is about $50,000, not including piles or anything like that. So when they're on site, we're going to drive all the piles for all future expansion, including the Sally Port and those kind of things that we may not have the budget for at this time.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Roskinek.
If I recall, the majority of this campus is located on a creek bed. Our evidence center next door, we've already experienced the floor heaving up because of the water getting into the soil and expanding and shrinking. So, yeah, I think it's pretty paramount, especially with the jail, to make sure that we know what's down below the surface there, because I'm assuming there's some creek bed activity.
Yes, yeah, and we have water issues in multiple buildings in this region. So we want to make sure that we can support the structure correctly and mitigate any water that's there.
Very good. Any further questions? Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Have a great day.
Next, this brings us up to citizens concerned with SDO, DDOT, South Dakota Department of Transportation's proposed closure of exits on I-90. I'll recognize Jerry Durr. And thank you, Jerry, for providing the information. There were 2 public meetings, and on the website, they're still taking public comments. I just wanted to point that out.
Correct. So good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. And thank you for putting it on the agenda. Jerry Durr, I live out by Farmingdale, South Dakota, so south of New Underwood. And most recently, DOT did make some public disclosures about this project. And I think Joan will get it up on the screen. But anyway, about this project, about the idea of looking at potentially closing some overpasses between Box Elder and Liberty, I believe, and then going east to the Jackson County line. And so in the last couple of weeks, they had a meeting, one in New Underwood, and there were about 100 people that attended that meeting in New Underwood at the community center. And so it was DOT out of Pierre that was putting on this, kind of public meeting with their consultants out of North Dakota, Mandan, North Dakota. And so really what I want to put on your radar is kind of how that meeting was ran and the pulse of the community in eastern Pennington County. And so the meeting they had in the community center in New Underwood, they had display boards put up. They had a TV in the corner about that size or less, and about a dozen chairs set. And the presentation was a looping presentation. And so the public came to the meeting as advertised, thinking that there would be a presentation from DOT or somebody about the scope of this project and the impact to the community and getting the community input. It is, a half hour goes by, people are stirring, people are talking, and the DOT office out of Pierre with some of their consultants had a registry that you could sign up for, and then, giving you paperwork to have a comment period, and that public comment period does close on April 4th. And you can access their website, and you can do an online comment as well. So everybody in the room was waiting for somebody to kind of take lead in the room and say, here's what's going on, here's what we're going to do, and that didn't happen. And so the concept that they put forward for that meeting was that you would just watch, have comments on the display board. If you had any, they would stand by the display board, and that you would just take a seat and watch the looping presentation, which was not their fault because of the audio in our community center. You couldn't hear it. And so there was some push from the community based on a little Q&A, and finally, they stepped up to the plate and came up to the room and then tried to do a Q&A, and that was led, I believe, by Steve Graham out of the DOT office in Pierre. And so the Q&A kind of went south after that because everybody was kind of stirred up about really not knowing what's going on, not having the proper input and information presented, and then it turned into a Q&A which after 2 hours got a little bit redundant because you began, at that point in time, a lot of people having input, asking some of the same questions. But in my letter that I addressed to the board covers the majority of the things that came out of both the New Underwood meeting and the Wall meeting. And so I attended the Wall meeting on the following night, and again, the crowd, about 100 people there, chairs set. This time, they were prepared for public presentation, so they had the consultant out of Mandan that is overseeing the results of this survey and putting the data together. So then he spoke and did a Q&A, and so the Wall meeting, did go much better, but the input and the concerns were the same. And so one of the things that came out of both meetings, the data analysis that came forward, they did get traffic analysis from the Pennington County Highway Department. So your superintendent, Joe Miller, the Highway Department, provided DOT and the consultants with some traffic analysis that they have that, is ongoing every year throughout the county. The consultant spoke to the fact that they took their data analysis on traffic in November. And that was a big concern to the public that was there and the community that uses these overpasses and commutes in these farm to market routes and trucking and haying type of years. And saying that you went to one of the months that's going to have some of the least traffic, but what they're trying to do is consolidate that traffic data that they're getting from multiple sources. And they also spoke to the fact about getting cell phone data and then, putting all that information to try to equalize and analyze what that traffic might be throughout the year. So none of what they had to say really floated in the room and reassured anybody in our community in eastern Pennington County. And, kind of some of the highlights would be that this just kind of came about and a short comment period from the public. And one of my questions to Steve Graham and the presenter was from Santec, I believe, is a consultant company. So you're taking this public input, but are you looking at the input from local governments? Are you looking at the impact to local governments and what that's going to do to, for example, Pennington County Highway? Let's just go worst case scenario, and they shut these overpasses down. Then what does Pennington County have to do with its infrastructure in eastern Pennington County? There was comments about, do we have to construct service roads? There was comments about maybe the traffic volume on some of the roads would increase so much that there would be blacktop. And, doing a mile of blacktop on a county road is about $2 million per mile. The state said it's about $1.5 million to do a mile of blacktop, but they lean toward $2 million. So then you get down to if they remove those out, and again, the landowners that are impacted by that. So these bridges, were put in around 1960, 1961, these overpasses, and a lot of that related to the Minuteman Missile Program with Ellsworth. And so they were given access to those missile silos going out into the rural areas, and my family's ranch had one of those missile silos up in Meade County. Missile sites on our property. And so Ellsworth at that time, which happened to in Meade County as well, and Pennington, put some effort into the infrastructure in some of these rural areas to get access to those missile silos. And, the taking out those missile silos and some of those going back to the private landowners, then becomes a question after this time. They're saying the lifespan on these bridges is about 50 years. And so I asked them, okay, so if you're going to take out one of these overpasses, what does that cost? I think the number was about 450, $500,000, something like that. Well, what does it cost to rehab or replace it? We don't have that number. And so that kind of gave an indication to the people that live in eastern Pennington County that there is no plan to really go through and rehab or fix these, that would look at a cost-effective way for the state to go ahead and just demo and remove. And in Wall, and again, I think the local office out of Rapid City with the DOT showed up in the Wall meeting, and, I did have a sidebar conversation with them, and it's, and I think that they realized as well, the consultants and the individuals out of Pier, they underestimated the impact it would have in the community as far as community showing up, community being vocal, and they really didn't understand the impact to some of the landowners in the community. And so, you know, when you have some of these public meetings and you say, I'm doing a 5-year highway study or I'm doing a comprehensive plan, and you hold a public meeting because you have to check that box, a lot of times you get 5 or 10 people to show up, and that's the kind of crowd they were thinking they would get. So, again, in Wall, when it was talked about, you know, one of the peer representatives with DOT said, well, if we could save, you know, $3 million on this project here, well, that's $3 million that we could put into Sioux Falls, $3 million we could put into Aberdeen, and I don't have to tell you the response that came from our community. And so it's just a concern about the short turnaround and the time frame of getting public input, and the fact that the consultants said that they were not taking into consideration the impact to local governments. And so I think even though it is a DOT project, and heard many people say, well, what can the county do? This is a state project. County, local government is best served at the local level. And so your citizens, it doesn't matter what district you're in, they're Pennington County citizens that feel like at this point in time, they don't have a voice because this is them trying to talk about a project that they have little information on to the state of South Dakota, and kind of have the mindset that this is a done deal. And DOT and the consultants continually reminded them, you know, we don't have anything firmed up. This is not a done deal. This is a study. So then they said once the study was completed, and they gave a time frame maybe around June, that they would come back and then educate as to what the findings were. But I think it's relevant that I know it's on the radar of your highway superintendent, and I have worked with a lot of highway superintendents, and I'm just going to say that I think that guy right there is the best one in the state. So it's on his radar, it's on the radar of our local DOT, but I think that there should be some community engagement with the board. And I would just ask that you as a board would look at it, because as it's seen in eastern Pennington County, twofold. One, there's a concern already about the maintenance on roads in eastern Pennington County and whether or not, you know, that level of maintenance is going to continue in the rural area. And two, that this would really be a tax shift. And so if the state is going to take some of these away, then that's going to put the burden back to Pennington County for that infrastructure, and whatever work has to be done to alter routes, improve routes. And what does come up as a great concern, was voiced more so down in Wall, is townships. And so townships are concerned that this traffic diversion, based on some of how the local traffic goes, that will hit the township roads and increase their ADP. And so it's going to take this traffic, divert it out to these other taxing districts that are not funded to that level to do that level of maintenance on this increased traffic in eastern Pennington County. The superintendent of Wall made a good point, in wherein the students going to school and increased mileage and time of travel for students in eastern Pennington County to get to our rural schools. And I did serve on our school board in New Underwood, and I can tell you that, you know, a rural community without a school is not a rural community. It dies away. And so there's already a struggle, you know, in eastern Pennington County to maintain what we have, and then putting another tax shift. And so she gave an example of the one of the levies that they have, you know, on one of their capital outlay and some of their other funding, their levies are not a max tax. And so that Wall spent, she said, $148,000 last year, because in the rural areas, we don't bus kids to school, we pay parents mileage. And so Wall paid $148,000 in mileage to get their students to school, and they anticipate that that's going to increase. And so she said, if that's an increase to us, we have to give that increase to you, so we're going to raise that levy. And that's just many of the examples of the impacting local government, townships, and then think about the landowners when this property was taken in eminent domain in 1960, 61 when it was built. At the Wall meeting, a lady in the back of the room held up a document that said, you know, here I got this from my grandfather and we're supposed to have access to this property in perpetuity. And so DOT is trying to gather some of those old documents on these right-of-ways that were taken back in the early 60s. And so think about, let's just say a 2,000 acre ranch or farm that had their property split. The home place is on the north side, maybe. Their operations are on the south side. This access went right through their property. That overpass gave them that access to the north side and the south side of their property to do their business and operations. And now that access is potentially could be taken away. And, it was talked about, well, we could put in, cattle underpasses. Okay, well, how do I get my farm equipment across there to do my farming? Do I go 20 miles around? And then, just think about the operational impact to those ag producers out there. And so it's got a real domino effect. It didn't play out well, and there's a lot of concern. And so really, this is why I asked to put it on the agenda, because I think that you as a board have a big voice that could, problem solve and come up with some ideas and have input on this, because, if it does happen, and to what degree, no matter what happens, if it's, if we don't maintain the infrastructure that we have, it will be a tax shift, and that tax shift will be a burden to the landowners and the property owners in eastern Pennington County.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jerry. I do want to give the opportunity to have, we have a representative here from Department of Transportation. Did you want to share anything? Do you have a question, or can we hear from?
We can hear from him, and then I'll ask my question.
Okay.
Good morning, I'm Mike Carlson. I'm the Rhapsody Area Engineer for the DOT. First, I want to apologize to everybody in Pennington County for raising their blood pressure. That was not our intent at all. Secondly, I do appreciate both at Wall and at New Underwood, we had so many people show up with their passion about the highways. It's exactly what we wanted to have happen. We just didn't want to raise everybody's blood pressure. Our intent is not to close anything, really, and that was our miscommunication. So that was our fault. We miscommunicated that. But what we wanted to do was just study from Ellsworth Base out to Cactus Flats and see where does traffic go, how does it impact our interstate system, and how do people go to and from where they need to go to and from. That was the intent of the study, and it was never intended to close anything at all. What we're going to do in the next 10, 15 years from that section is spend $200-300 million worth of construction funds. So we want to make sure that when we spend it appropriately. So if we have a bridge, for instance, that's really close to another bridge that maybe we have little or no traffic, do we still need that? If the response from the citizens is yes, we need it, it stays in place. If it says no, we can go around, if there's a 2-mile detour to go around and we can access another structure, we can take it out because we can spend that money someplace else, whether it's in Aberdeen or Sioux Falls or someplace else in the Black Hills, because we're spending, I think in 2028, we're going to spend $220 million, if it holds true right now, just in the Rhapsody area complex. That's just Lawrence County, Meade, and Pennington County. So we're going to spend a lot of money. We just want to make sure we spend it appropriately because we have a lot of needs and not as much money. But again, I want to apologize to, especially Eastern Pennington County. So I got 20 phone calls from people concerned about this, and I kept trying to emphasize we're not closing anything. This is just a long-term study we're doing right now to make sure that what we build is what's necessary. We may find out we got to build another interchange. An interchange would cost in excess of $25 million. We may need to build another overhead structure somewhere because of traffic changes and patterns. Maybe we can take one out, move it someplace else that's a better location for it. Those are things we're looking at right now to make sure that we build what's right.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mike. I got Mr. Laster first. Mr. Laster?
Well, my question was just going to be more, and it could have been to Joe or it could have been to Mr. Durr. Now that the DOT is here, should we consider requesting a presentation from them and a public comment input? I know we're kind of close to the deadline now, since it's April 14th is a deadline for public comment, but would it be wise to bring them here in a public meeting forum so that they can gather more data? Or do you think you have enough data now that lets you know the impact. I'm just thinking from the presentation that Mr. Durr and my conversations with Joe and the fire departments, and because that's my district as well, and the fire departments reached out to me real quick whenever they heard about this, so we can let the state really know the impact not only to the community, but also the community citizens, but also to the community as a county as a whole, and what it's going to do to, our access to be able to provide emergency services and whatnot.
First of all, we would welcome your comments, and that's not a problem. We would, even if we're beyond the deadline, I think the deadline you said was April 4th. If you're beyond that, we'll still take comments. It's important for us to take comments. The deadline's not what's the important part. The important part is we get comments. So if it's beyond that, we're fine. We like to have a deadline so you know when you need to get your comments in by, but if you're beyond that by a week or so, that's just fine. The other thing I want to point out to you real quickly is when we rebuild this, we'll build it in sections. And so this is an overall look from exit 67 to exit 131. Once we start building, we'll build from exit 67 to exit to like 83. We'll build that section next. And if we're going to take something out there, or we're going to do something different in that location, we're going to have another public period where we're going to have public comment. And at this location, here's what our plan is. What do you think? If the public's outraged by it, we don't build it that way. We will figure out what we need to do. So this is just the first step in public comments that we're going to get from the public. Every time we're going to build another set of projects, we're going to go ahead and have some more public comments and ask what the public thinks about what we're going to do. It may end up we build everything exactly the way it is right now, just with new technology and now these bridges that are 50 years plus older. Our bridges hopefully will be 75 to 100 years old going in the future.
Mr. Ross?
So, Mike, what was it, about a month ago that we visited at the Johnson Siding Church, and I had a concern. We were actually there to talk about the Highway 385 project, and I said, what's going on with those bridges? And Mike said the same thing to me. He said, we're not taking any bridges out. We're doing a study to see if any of those bridges aren't being used enough that we could take one out. But he said, by no means do we have any plans to take bridges out.
No, and I want to apologize that we miscommunicated our intents and our desires. We hire a lot of consultants, and consultants are good at what they do. But like a typical engineer, they're lousy communicators. I mean, they're absolutely lousy at it. And so I apologize for that. We should be better communicators, but that's just not our forte. We don't have the confidence to be able to do that. So right now we have no plans to take anything out. We just want to see how the public impacts our infrastructure and what we need to put back in place to make sure that we maintain that same level of service.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Drews?
So, Mike, basically all of these bridges were built in the 1960s.
Correct.
I think the last piece of interstate that opened was in 72, and so the bridges in that area, Pressure Vivian area, were probably already completed in the 60s also for the most part. So are all of these being looked at then statewide on both 29 and 90?
I don't know if I only go to Cactus Flats. Beyond that, I have so much trouble with my own stuff. I don't care what anyone else is doing right now.
Right.
As you can see, I have my own problems. But I do think that this is what they're doing. They're looking at everything. We're spending a lot of money. For instance, down by Platte Winter, there's that bridge down there. We got to replace that bridge because, as you've heard in the past, we've had chunks fall off into the river, almost hit some people fishing down below that. I wouldn't fish underneath that river, that bridge if I was you. But that bridge alone is going to cost $250 million. So we want to make sure we spend our money appropriately. So in order to do that, we want to make sure we do it right. So I'm guessing you're seeing that every place else where they're doing a big study just to make sure that here's what we have right now. Is this still meeting the needs of the people? If it is, we build it back. If it isn't, do we need to adjust it? If we adjust it, how do we adjust it? And what do we need to do in the future?
Okay, thank you.
Looks like Joe,
One last question, Mike. When this study is done, then would it be available? How long would it be before it's available for the commission to take a look at?
Good question. I'm guessing sometime this summer it'll be available. Mr. Durr said it was going to be available in June.
They talked about June.
So if it's June, probably July, August, it'll be in our on our website. And if you guys want a copy, I'll make sure you guys get a copy of it.
We have a follow-up on that, Jerry? what Mike is saying? Do you have a
Hang
follow-up on that?
I got Ross connected up.
Well,
on
you're
the
asking
floor.
questions but not letting him speak.
He was right in the middle of answering.
Yeah, I know. I see what you're doing.
No.
So
Thank you.
Oh, I was just, yeah.
I do have a comment if I can related, just so you know. At the meeting, the question that you asked Commissioner Drews was asked at Wall, is there a study like this, evaluating bridges like this going on anywhere else in the state? And they were told no. The timeline that was asked, well, let's just say that you got this, you're gonna, when are you gonna start the project on the interstate going from exit 61 east?
I think that's 2027.
Okay, so 2027, they said, well, if you're going to take these out, then when would this decision be made? Well, the study would indicate that. Well, when would the project start, and when would, some of these locations, if you were going to take them out, when would that come? Well, it's not going to be for a long time. Well, when is that going to happen? 2027. So this is why the public and the people that live in eastern Pennington County are upset, is because they were given the idea, and appreciate your clarification, but they were given the idea that these are on the chopping block and that these comments would be a deciding factor. It was also stated, not in a group, but, in a smaller group, that the bridges, whether or not these bridges and overpasses would come out would be based on politics. And that did not play well. Politics should have nothing to do with this. It should be the needs of the citizens and what serves them the best in this community. And so that is why, and I don't believe you were at those meetings, okay, so that's why this information was communicated 2027, no other study going on like this throughout the state. And, we will come back with our results and we'll communicate that, sometime in June. So, yeah, it wasn't communicated well, wasn't received well, and there is misinformation in the community about this project. So that's why I'm asking you to get involved.
Okay. Mr. Roskinick, you had a follow-up?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Mike, do you have anything you want to finish up with?
The only thing I can say, and I didn't know the information about the other areas, but I do know right now in our long-range STIP, we have projects set from 61 all the way out to Wall right now. They'll slide back and forth. The last 4 years of our STIP are the planning STIP, and those projects are subject to move around in years depending on funding and what we got available and the condition of the roads. So maybe that's why this study is done right now, just so it gives us additional data points. We had a lot of comments, a lot of great public comments. I appreciate the public coming out and talking about that stuff. It helps us immensely. Often we're told we don't hear the public, but we really try to hear the public and try to accommodate them as much as we can. And I just want to reiterate that we want to know how the public uses our facilities so we can build the best structure or the best infrastructure we can so that it serves the citizens of South Dakota.
Thank you, Mike. Looks like Joe's got a comment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Joe Miller, Pennington County Highway Superintendent. I just would make one suggestion that I appreciate Jerry bringing this forward. We've been on this study advisory team since this thing started. Apologize, I was not able to make it to the public meetings due to a conflict, but one suggestion for the commission for you guys to get involved. I know you said public comment period closes April 4th. I would assume there was going to be another study advisory team meeting after the public comment closes to analyze all that data. What I would maybe suggest to the county commission is maybe draft a letter, how they feel, and we can take that to the study advisory team meeting. Highway would be happy to draft that and bring it back for your guys' signature if you'd like that to happen. That would be one way for you guys to get involved. We are definitely, I spoke to Jerry last week on the phone. The Highway Department is not in favor of any of these, right? There's maybe one or two that we wouldn't necessarily maybe oppose just because there's a mile difference, right? I think 69, 169th. There's one interchange at 167 and an interchange at 169. So we're going to be reasonable about it with the DOT, right? But we hear the public as well. So it is going to be a cost to Pennington County if some of these are removed, and I think Mike summed it up well. This is just it's a baby step, right? In the process of them planning to spend their dollars, much like we do with our 5-year plan. We have to plan to spend our dollars. Our master transportation plan, our Highway 1416 Radar Hill corridor study, we're planning to spend our dollars, making sure we're spending them in the best way possible. So that's what the DOT was doing, and I agree with Mike. It was just communicated in a very, very poor way to the public, with especially the individuals in eastern Pennington County.
Thank you. It looks like on our agenda, this is pretty much for informational, but Joe just made a comment that they could draft a letter giving the Highways Department's views on that for public comment to them, so that could be a motion from this board.
Would that be something that?
We welcome it, we welcome it.
Okay. Mr. Lester.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion for Highway Department to draft a letter showing the impacts and our concerns from the county.
Okay. Couple things on that. We will be out of town for the next commission meeting, but we can get that letter drafted into maybe Travis Laster, since it's your district, for you to present if you'd like that. But we will not be here at the next meeting. So,
Mr. Chair.
We got a motion to have it, okay, in a second.
Second.
Okay, oh, you were gonna second?
sorry.
Chair.
Are you done, Travis?
Yeah, that was my motion.
Okay, Ms. Hadcock.
So I appreciate Mr. Durr and Mr. Carlson, you both showing up and giving us information on this. I think it's very important. Joe remembers when we did low maintenance, no maintenance, and full maintenance roads. You want to go somewhere about roads and people show up, I'll just tell you ahead of time, sir. There's usually 100 people at the meetings when we did the low maintenance and no maintenance roads and the full maintenance roads. So eastern part of South Dakota, a lot of ag people, a lot of business people, and schools, people that have lots of kids that need those bridges and those areas taken care of. You want to get them hot? Talk about roads. I enjoyed actually going out to the meetings, but I see the impact of Pennington County that this is going to make. And I appreciate you being here and listening to us today, and hopefully take that letter seriously that we put forward, sir, and how those impacts make a difference to our citizens. So thank you both for coming today.
Thank you. We do have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, brings us up to item 21, which is items from the public. Per SDCL 125-1, a speaker request form is required. This is a time for the members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the Board of Commissioners on policies and issues affecting county government and its function. Action will not be taken during this item on any issue brought forth that are not properly noticed. Speakers under this item will be recorded in the minutes by the name and area of interest. First speaker request form I have is from Darren Howie.
Hi, I'm Darren Howie with Howie Construction. I was hired by the Miss Dairies on Lot 8 Sudbury Ranch Road to construct a home for them. I hired Adam with DTE to come up and do the engineering tests for soils, make sure that we're building on a solid foundation, do the perk tests, and do all the engineering for the septic system. I've got the report back from them stating that it qualifies, meets all the qualifications for a standard septic system. Upon that, I submitted my building permit, and TJ went out and looked at the hole and just said, no, we're not going to do a standard septic system. His only response was that it is unconsolidated bedrock. Well, those two terms contradict each other. There's nothing of the sort there. Again, we've went out, looked at it, and then I'll let Adam speak intelligently on the rest of it.
Thanks, Darren.
So,
Just identify yourself for the record.
oh, sorry about that. My name is Adam Dando. I'm with Dakota Testing and Engineering, or DT as it's referred to. So to continue off of what Mr. Howe was saying, unconsolidated bedrock is not a thing that exists. Bedrock is generally defined as a solid rock underlying a loose deposit. So And you guys know what bedrock is as well as I do. You dig down, you hit it, you can't go any further, especially if you're using a mini excavator or other digging equipment. The drain field that we performed, I don't have the rates directly in front of me. However, everything was performed with the codified law as per required in Pennington County. Where is the number on that? SDCL Chapter 74530130. It was also overseen by a licensed engineer in the state of South Dakota, a man named Daryl Utter, who also has the, what's that word I'm looking for? OSWTS, has gone through the license application for on-site water treatment septic system design. So it's been stamped and sealed by a registered engineer in the state who's gone through the wastewater treatment system design program. So I'm a bit confused as to what the boundaries are here that are keeping this from being approved as well. I'm hoping for some answers.
So Darren and Adam, I got both your speaker request forms, so that's good. I think it, as I read, we can't take no action on this item, but what I would recommend is that we have Brittany, our planning director here, and her assistant. I would probably like to set up a time to sit down and go through this with them.
We've done that once. We can sure do it again. We're not getting any resolve and it needs to move forward.
Okay.
Chair,
Ms. Hack.
if I can make a suggestion, I think we should put it on the planning agenda so we have full discussion, because I think planning, we did have a meeting with the home builders. And we also had meetings, would be me and Travis, also had meetings with the septic installers. And I think if we had a general put on the agenda about septic systems and how they work, and basically why we don't have engineer stamps on them in Pennington County, I think it would be a good discussion to put on an agenda.
Well, as I said, this is no motions on this on public comment, so that would have to be something come forward after this meeting. Brittany, do you have any comment on that?
We had met with these individuals about this and about the requirements on our ordinance. Commissioner Hadcock and Commissioner Lassiter were both there. This is kind of out of left field because it was resolved, we felt at that time, and then now they're coming up here in front again. Our ordinance hasn't changed. It's been the same since 2010 for our requirements. On most of these, we do have the state geologist go out and take a look at it to confirm what our office does. And that was done on this particular request as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up to Brittany.
Mr. Lester.
You said the state geologist went out to this site for,
Yes.
okay, and what was their statement on that one? And did
They
they communicate
concurred with our office.
that they concurred that it was unconsolidated bedrock? I just
like
want to
a-
make sure that we're,
A bedrock material, and it did not meet our requirements.
okay, did the Howies, did they get that report?
This is all, yeah.
Yes, according to our environmental planner, it was sent to him. The information was sent. And we can get those emails, verification if needed.
If you don't mind, would you
Okay.
just clue me in on those? And I would say clue in Commissioner Hadcock just because we were both in those meetings, but.
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Roskin.
Brittany, can I? So we're talking about.
Don't run away yet.
We're talking about one septic system?
Pardon?
We're talking about one septic system permit?
Yes.
And so if it's my understanding from the ones that I've done in the past is that you do the perk test. You got to have 3 perk tests?
So usually what we do is we do the profile hole first to see if there's any restrictive layers, bedrock, groundwater. Because the perk tests are somewhat onerous and they take time, so if the profile hole pass, sometimes they do them at the same time, they can do them at different times, but there's a 2-part process. There's the soil profile hole, and then there's the percolation.
So the soil profile hole, that's basically taking a backhoe going down 8 feet.
Correct.
And looking at the profile going from the surface down 8 feet.
Correct.
2 to 3 feet.
I think the ones that we've done, it seems like we did the perk test first and then the soil profile, but
You can do them either way, but
Okay,
typically,
just
if
wanted
you
to make
do
sure I
find,
understood what was going on.
right, if you do find a restrictive layer, then you'd have to do the perk test again when you find a passable profile hole.
Okay.
So is there any process for them to appeal this decision? So I would suggest you appeal to the Board of Adjustments. They you go up to Brittany's office and apply for an appeal.
Sounds good.
Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
guys, for coming.
With that being said, we'll take a 10-minute, I'd look for a motion to take a 10-minute break while we recess for planning to set up the computer. Moved by Drews,
Second.
second by Laster. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed, motion carries. Okay, I'd look for a motion to come back into session.
So move.
Moved by Drews,
Second.
second by Lassiter. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We're going to start on the planning and zoning requirements on this. The commission still utilizes speaker request forms. If you'd like to speak on any item, please complete a speaker request form. Locate the bookshelves in the back of the chambers and return to Commission Clerk Geraldine Sissick. Located at the lower left side of the dais. With that, I'll recognize Brittany.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brittany Molitor. The Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine planning and zoning items. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. The consent agenda for planning and zoning contains the following item. Item A is public hearing of Plan Unit Development Overlay COPU 24-0001 for Michael Valone, Provolone LLC, to allow a specialty resort in a highway service and agriculture district. And this was continued from the March 19th, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting. And it is recommended to continue COPU 24-0001 to the April 16th, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting.
Is there anybody from the public who wishes to have this removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there any commissioners who would like to have this removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Moved by Drews,
Second.
second by Lassiter. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next, this brings us up to the uncontested hearings, and this is the following planning and zoning matters in our uncontested hearings are those which the planning department has not yet received or provided comment contesting the item. The documents for each item have been reviewed by the commissioners, and decision during these hearings will be made based on the information provided in the packet and a short presentation. If we receive comment contesting the item, the matter will be addressed in the same manner as a contested hearing. Cody.
Cody Sack, environmental planner. Item B is mining permit MP 20-11. It's to register an existing mining operation. The applicant is Pete Lean and Sons. So when staff was writing the staff report, it was discovered that some of the lots that Pete Lean is covered under for their construction permits and their state permit were not included in the advertising for this registration. Those properties need to be included. So staff is going to recommend to continue mining permit 20-11 to the June 5th Board of Commissioners meeting to allow time to advertise the additional properties.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Drew, seconded by Hadcock. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item C.
Megan Talmadge, planner. Agenda item C is Planned Unit Development Overlay COPU 24-0002, and it's to allow a planned unit development overlay for agritourism on the subject property. The applicant is Daniel and Shonda Knoof. This is located west of New Underwood along Highway 1416. It is 34.56 acres in agriculture district. It is currently vacant, and there's 100-year special flood hazard area on the property. The zoning ordinance, section 216, lists standards and requirements that a PUD is assessed. They are listed on screen, and also with that, zoning ordinance section 510 lists 7 criteria that it must meet also. That is also listed on screen. In the interdepartmental review, the county highway department noted that an approach permit for the existing approach must be filed. The existing approach is in floodways, so I believe that it was preferred that that would be moved. This planned unit development would consist of a single-family residence, accessory structures related to agritourism, 3 recreational vehicle sites, on-site tours, and the sale of baked good and produce. The state defines agritourism as an activity carried out on a farm or ranch that allows members of the general public to view or participate in agriculture activities for recreational, entertainment, and/or educational purposes. The applicant will specifically be utilizing the Harvest Host program, which is an RV membership where people bring their RVs to stay on the property. The caretaker residence will be occupied by the applicants. The land use will still be agriculture, and the property will contain heritage animals, fruit trees, heirloom garden, and agriculture structures. And staff finds no significant issues with the applicant's request, as the uses requested are in harmony with uses by rights or conditional uses in an agriculture zoning district. So staff recommends approval with 21 conditions.
Is there any questions for Megan? Seeing none, I'm going to the board for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskinek.
move to approve COPU 24-0002 with 21 conditions.
Second.
Moved by Roskinek, seconded by Hadcock. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thanks, Megan. Item D.
Item D is public hearing of ordinance amendment OA 24-03 for Pennington County to amend section 319 vacation home rental of the Pennington County zoning ordinance. This was heard in front of the planning commission. There was quite a bit of conversation about the difference between a special use permit, a license. There was public there that had some comments. So staff is putting together some information for the planning commission. And so they did recommend to continue this. So with that, planning commission recommended to continue this to the May 7th, 2024 Board of Commissioners.
Second.
Moved by Drew, seconded by Lassiter.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Roskinek.
Brittany, I looked that over, so that relative to minimal lot size, there is no requirements for minimal lot size in this version?
Correct.
Okay.
So we have a motion to continue to the May 7th, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries.
Item E is public hearing of ordinance amendment OA 24-04 for Pennington County to amend section 511 fees of the Pennington County zoning ordinance. So this section was the fees associated with the vacation home rental license, and since the ordinance amendment was continued, the planning commission also recommended to continue OA 24-04 to the May 7th, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting.
So move.
Moved by Lassiter, seconded by Hadcock to continue to the May 7th, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item F is public hearing of ordinance amendment OA 24-01 to repeal section 318 guest house of the Pennington County zoning ordinance. This topic was brought to you under the planning commission, or the planning workshop, and because we feel like the guest house ordinance is no longer needed because you can have ADUs or accessory dwelling units. This has a lot of strict limitations on it. So most people that want an accessory dwelling are going under section 324, the ADU section of the ordinance, instead of guest house. So we are recommending that it is repealed, and the planning commission did concur and recommended approval of ordinance amendment OA 24-01.
Is there any questions for Brittany? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskinek.
move to approve OA 24-01.
It's been moved by Roskinek, seconded by Drews. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item G is public hearing of ordinance amendment OA 24-02 for Pennington County to amend Section 511 fees of the Pennington County zoning ordinance. This section of the ordinance is to allow for the fees for finishing an existing or new basement or new construction basement. Currently, the fee was calculated at the $176 or whatever the ICC. We did meet with some of the members of the Home Builders Association and discussed changing this to something that was more appropriate for what they are actually charging. So there is an exception now under the fees that for a basement finish for new or existing would be $45 a square foot. So
Any-
Planning Commission did recommend approval of ordinance amendment 24-02.
Any questions for Brittany? Seeing none, I'd look
Mr.
for
Chair.
Mr. Laster.
Move to approve ordinance amendment 0A24-2.
Moved by Lassiter,
Second.
seconded by Drews. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you,
you.
Brittany. This brings us up to item 23, which is the 2024 legislative session recap and summer study topics. Recognize Commissioner Drews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, 99th legislative session was completed this past week. A little action was required on the last day because the governor had not done any vetoes on legislation. And so during the session, our county association had tracked over 90 bills. I'll touch on just a few of those. Most of these we have visited about briefly previously, but Senate Bill 47 revised the incentive program for juvenile diversion opportunities. The primary county to utilize the benefits of this program has been Pennington, in trying to provide alternatives to juveniles instead of incarceration. The revised legislation increases the amount of successful completion diversions from $250 to $750. Our state's attorney had reported that the cost of successful diversions has been nearly $750 each. Senate Bill 112 established a non-resident title fee of an additional $100. $50 of that will remain with the county. Senate Bill 1187 appropriated the $7 million for counties and cities to establish cybersecurity service. This carried an emergency clause, and so the legislation is already active, and our association, along with the Municipal League, are already in discussions with Dakota State University on how to implement the program. Cybersecurity creates a real threat to our local communities. House Bill 1039 provides that the state, not the county where the prison is located, is responsible for the legal expenses originating from a crime committed at a facility maintained by the Department of Corrections. Obviously, this only pertains to the 5 counties where we have prisons located, but we do experience an expense annually from those crimes. And so this will move that cost over to the state effective July 1. House Bill 1057 created a commission on indigent legal services and Office of Indigent Legal Services. Most of the 9 members who to serve on this commission have already been appointed. Once established, the commission will take over the appeals on indigent defense cases. In addition, $3 million was appropriated to be dispersed back to counties based on the pro rata share of legal indigent costs incurred. The hope is to expand that amount annually until the state takes over the total cost of indigent legal defense. Currently, that cost is about $50 million a year for the 66 counties in South Dakota. SB 1092 increased the 911 surcharge for public safety dispatch from $1.25 per line to $2. This will generate about $20 million statewide for the 28 PSAPs and hopefully save Pennington County about $1 million in general fund expense. Summer topics include a study on property tax assessment methodology. I believe this committee will be collecting considerable information from each of the county assessment offices throughout South Dakota. The other summer study will be on artificial intelligence and the regulation of internet access by minors. Legislators will take a look at how the growth of Ellsworth may be considered economically by the entire state, and not just one of the arguments we kept hearing at the legislature was that this is really a Pennington County, Meade County issue, not a state issue. But Ellsworth Air Force Base is, from some legislators, is more of a concern statewide because of the economics that it brings to the state of South Dakota. In fact, one of the things that was brought up is that with the current construction going on at Ellsworth right now, that will generate about $80 million in excise taxes for the state of South Dakota. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Drews. Next, that brings us up to item number 24, and this is one that I put on the agenda. This is the suspension of compensation exception, and I'll read what's in the record. The 2025 wage study is in the final stages of completion. If officially adopted into the September 2024 budget, the wage study process, including updating all position descriptions, will result in appropriate compensation and adjustments on the newly created wage scale. I request the commission to make a motion to suspend compensation exceptions for the next 6 months to allow for the wage study to be completed. If the proposed wage scale is adopted in 2024 budget process, this suspension will allow for all positions to be placed appropriately on the new wage scale. I had this put on the agenda because I'd listened to the commission. We were having concerns and wanting to wait before we move forward on suspending the wage exceptions. Quite frankly, through the compensation committee, they've worked through the final stages of the completion of this process, and I think it behooves us to try to make adjustments between now and when this gets done, and I think September would be a good time. I'd like to suspend the exceptions up until September to give that chance of the wage study for completion. The staff have worked hard on the wage study. They've broken down into 5 different bands, the professional, technical support, and public safety and medical. They're working through all the positions, and I think it's best to wait and see till those are done. And if I'm correct, I've heard that from the commission previous, but
Mr. Chair, yeah.
I think we're just trying to wait till we're at this point. We're at that point, so I think it's a good move to do.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Laster.
I'm glad to see this. This is something I called for. I'm not going to remember exactly. I believe it was in June, July, and then I think I reiterated it in October and then December. I guess my question is, why is the last 6 months the important time whenever it could have been impacted sooner? I mean, have you heard any feedback or report back from when we filed the open meetings violations that dealt with some of this? Or is this just purely because we're in the last 6 months and you want to make sure that there's no adjustments outside of the norm until we can move forward with the right information? I guess is what I'm kind of trying to figure out.
Well, I think I answered it. The wage study was working on it for all the employees, and the staff was working on it, and they're at that point to where I think we need to put that on there to hold it so that we go through our budget process. They come back with their plan to what they feel that how they can make the adjustments if needed and so forth. Staff has taken the time to meet with every commissioner and go over what they've done, and so that's why.
Chair.
Are you done, Travis?
I am.
Ms. Adcock?
So in November, actually, the HR director came up front, if you want to look at the video, and said that she wanted no more wage exceptions. It was during Joe's, when he was going to look at wage comparables and market analysis, and we never did it then. Also in November, we filed on open meeting violations because we didn't call them compensation exceptions. They were excessive compensation wages done behind closed doors. So for you to do this now looks political instead of when you did it back then. And to say that the wage study is being done, it has been being worked on for a while, and we just kept going back. And if you look at those exceptions, they're huge. We also did department heads where we raised department heads over 100,000 each of their 17 departments behind closed doors, which the public is not very happy about. So at this point, you're bringing this forward and saying, now we're going to do this. I think it's a little too late to do this. Plus, you know what? You raised a bunch of department heads. What about the employees? Now you're sending a message to the employees, is what I hear from this, that they can wait till the 2025 wage study to be done, but you didn't tell the leaders of their groups to do that. So I think it's a disservice what you're doing now. I think you are running.
Point of order. You're making this political. Point of order.
You could have done this a while ago, Lloyd, and now you brought this forward, and it was brought forward by your HR director. You didn't do anything about it. You kept doing excessive wage changes. It was filed with executive session. You did nothing. Now you're running, and now all of a sudden it's going to be put up front and said, oh, we got to stop this now. I encourage the public to see how many wage exceptions were done in executive session and how many came out of there, including department heads. So I'm not in agreement with this because I've heard from your employees and they think now is not a good time to tell them after you've raised their leaders or their department heads to tell them now they can wait till 2025.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
I'd move to suspend compensation exceptions effective immediately until September 30, 2024. The only compensation exceptions which will be considered are administrative errors resulting in retroactive pay being awarded to an employee.
Moved by Drews.
Second.
Second by Lassiter. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
One no from Ms. Hadcock. Next, that brings us up to items from chair and commission members. This is a time for individual members to bring forth ideas of concerns to the full board. Official action will not be taken on any items brought forth at this time. Direction may be given to bring back items before the board for future considerations. Is there anything for that?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Laster.
I'm just giving the board heads up. I've been invited. Y'all may have seen that email about a hand count. I'm probably going to go to Spearfish, one that's the least impactful to my schedule because I have something that's scheduled this Saturday, but the one on Friday, I'll be going up to watch that hand count example, and I'll bring back some feedback on that one as well. Like I gave consideration that I'll be going down to Fall River whenever they actually do their hand count for their voting in June, but I also going to go to this one to see the organization that's hosting it to get some information. I'll bring it back.
Okay, thank you, Travis.
Chair.
Ms. Hadcock.
So I went to the meeting that you saw that was publicized on the TV with Pace Law. I was invited to that meeting. We did not know at the time that the governor was going to show up. So that was basically about BLM land, the Forest Service land, and co-agreements on those lands. The land for Pace Law, they have just, their statute of limitations ran out, so they are illegally, after 6 years that ran out, they are legally in binding contract. I've been going to these meetings for about 9 years. I've appreciated it. Last one was on policing on some of the tribal lands that were very interesting, but it was pretty cool that the governor showed up. People were very respectful. Just trying to work together with the tribes, and the governor is always a thing to be at a meeting and watch because both sides have good points about what they're talking about. So appreciated being invited to that meeting and their meetings. So thought we needed to update that at this point there's nothing happening in Pennington County. In fact, they gave us heads up on how they've been treating, and they also said to the governor how Pennington County has treated them very professional with the PACE law agreements and other things that Pennington County has done, especially their highway department. Also has in Pennington County, they have brought up how he's treated them very well, Superintendent Joe Miller and their group. So there was a lot of pluses for Pennington County there, just working with the tribes and being very cooperative on their agreements and finding solutions for them. So I appreciated that they gave us a kudos on that.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize some of our employees who I'd gotten an email from NACO on the leadership training, and they said Pennington County staff has been doing an outstanding job of signing up and completing leadership classes. And we had 21 employees go through this. This is an online one that they do. First one was high performance leadership course graduates was Connie Berlato, Cindy Moeller, Casey Iceland, Annette Brandt, Carol Bancroft, Stephanie Olson, Thomas Reese, Walter McDuff, Audra Castile, and Kathleen Rice. And for leadership analytics course graduate was Sandy Sortland, leadership on purpose course graduate Carol Bancroft, and leadership courses in process that people are working on right now is Dustin Hall, Joe Miller, Nicole Farr, Sandy Sortland, Davis Parcell, Michael Iverson, Nathan Mertz, and Audra Castile. And leadership courses registered in 2024 are Shanna Hawkard. And this is along the other training that they're doing. So they thought it was so outstanding, and they decided to send an email saying they were really appreciative of how much Pennington County's as staff have taken up the leadership courses. And so we're very proud of them and glad we could provide that for them.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
I think this is good recognition for those people. I'm pleased that they've taken the role in being able to take those leadership classes and just encourage others in the county that would choose to or be interested in taking these courses, that this is one of the things that NACO offers. And if they want to express an interest, I think they can go through Carol Bancroft through HR in order to get the proper applications to file for those.
Yep. With that, we'll move on to meeting and committee reports. I'll recognize Travis Laster.
All right. I was unable to make it to the building committee. I had a conflict with one of my schedules, just like the Complete Health Center Board meeting. That one was at the same time as my PFAS Town Hall meeting, so I'll start with that one. That day we had about 80 individuals in the room and on Zoom. I think we had about 50 or 60 in the room, 20 to 25 on Zoom. It was a pretty good, engaging conversation, just some updates with the line, updates with where they're at and some of the upcoming recommendations for levels. And then also there was some discussion about the military symposium that's going to be dealing with it here coming up in April that I'll be at as well. So that was a good town hall meeting from my thoughts to allow the county to host it so that they could give an update to the community. But also all three congressional delegates were here. Dusty Johnson's office, Thune, and Rollins' office had their delegates here to talk to and hear from the citizens as well. The other meeting that I was at that's not on here is the Central States Fair annual meeting, and I'll just give quick updates on that one. The Blue Ribbon Award went out to Steve Owen, the Merit Award went out to Days of 66, and then the Hero Award went out to Roy Lemmel. And then we selected 3 new board members, James Helverson, Dustin Jenner, and Mark Larrabee. So that's just kind of the updates right there. And that's about all for me.
Thanks, Travis. Mr. Drews.
Okay, Elevate, Board of Directors Elevate. Tom Johnson shared that the primary area that they look at for movement and economics for Elevate includes Custer, Pennington, Meade, and Lawrence counties, with the exception of Spearfish proper. That's not included in there. But it appears that about 10 people daily are moving into this particular area. So no doubt growth continues to happen. Also, Elevate has been working on discovering solutions for the child care dilemma in the area, and they've recently received a $255,000 grant to assist in that effort. Also, on March 26th, the Healthcare Trust Board met. Wellmark's Carlotta Carr reported that Wellmark has its own YouTube channel, Health Matters, and which is a podcast with a different topic each month. This month is mental health. Trust Board determined to continue to have the health and dental plans tied together. If an employee enrolls in health insurance, they are automatically enrolled in dental insurance. A flyer will be created communicating the importance of oral health to overall physical health. The next meeting on May 1, and there will be further discussion on the difference between self-funded versus fully funded health options. Carr also pointed out there may be other options to consider, and she'll send further information for the board to review. In addition, more discussion will be had on potential health screening options at the next meeting. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Drews. Ron Ross Connect.
March 19th, we had the assessment presentation in Hill City. It was a heavy attendance, 150 plus, standing room only. In attendance was Cindy Mueller from the Auditor's Office, Annette Brandt from the Treasurer's Office, Shannon Rittberger from the Director of Equalization's Office, Commissioner LaCroix, Sheriff Mueller, District 30 Representative Dennis Kroll, District 30 Representative Trish Ladner, District 34 Representative Mike Derby, District 30 Senator Mueller, and then Hill City Mayor Mike Virgil. It was pretty much the same presentation that we saw earlier today that Shannon put on. March the 20th, 2024, Pennington County Housing Redevelopment approved the fiscal year end March 31st, 2025 operating budget for Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program, Memorial Park Apartments, Harney View Apartments, Black Fox Manor, Helio Manor Apartments, Public Housing AMP 11, Public Housing AMP 16, and Central Administration. We also approved resolution number 951, which was approval of public housing operating budgets. Then we moved to approve the letter of intent for the sale and purchase of public housing units subject to disposition by private sale. That involves 18 single-family residents, also known as scattered housing units, to possibly be purchased by Black Hills Works Foundation. If this sale goes through, the proceeds of the transaction will be earmarked for our 70-unit workforce housing project located near Vicky Powers Park. Purchase price will reflect 18 independent appraisals that were prepared in 2023. And then we also discussed Pennington County Housing Redevelopment Commission employee performance appraisal and wage and salary schedule, which will be effective April 1st, 2024. March 31st, we had the Pennington County Council of Aging. We approved funding amount of $5,647.50 for South Dakota DHS Division of Long-Term Services and supports for the senior transportation through purchase of dial-a-ride tickets. We also approved the funding for the Keystone Senior Citizen Center of $1,566 for the purchase of a commercial range oven used to prepare meals for seniors. The original range was old and basically quit working. March the 26th, Building Committee, the jail. There was a tour of the jail that was held a week and a half ago to the interested firms for the CMAR, which could be a construction manager at risk contracting. Representatives from Skull Construction, Robert Skull Construction, and Lloyd Companies attended this. CMAR proposals are due this Thursday, April the 4th, 2024, and will be reviewed on April the 9th. Interviews to select a CMAR will be held on April the 15th and 16th. The interview panel will consist of myself, Sheriff Mueller, Sheriff Deputy Mark Hughes, BKV representatives, Walter McDuff, and Kevin Burton. A contractor with FMG for geotechnical services recommended. We approved that one earlier today, or we had the discussion on that. 900 Concourse. TSP is currently working on CDs or construction bid documents and will be submitting a cost estimate for the project in the next few weeks, with possible plans being available to contractors in early May. Direction was given to ABI and TSP to install projector screens on the back wall of the dais in lieu of 2 large monitor screen areas. That area will be, the wall in that area will be installed with conduit, so that in the future, if we want to use a different type of technology, we'll have the conduit to run the wires to do so. 14 St. Joseph Street, access control will soon be installed for the building. Remodeling is progressing well. On the east half of the building, where building and grounds will be located, building and ground staff have moved over. TSP is preparing a remodeling plans for the Public Defender's Office, which will be located on the west side of the building. No plans for the former area occupied by building and grounds. Nothing really in place in that area. Is about 3,000 square feet. Building and grounds will continue to occupy that area to maintain and keep chemical and custodial storage in that building that they were in. County mail services. Sheriff Mueller mentioned that details regarding changes to the county mail services after the move to Concourse have been resolved. Utilizing senior volunteers may be part of the new services. It was approved to keep the existing tax payment drop box for the treasurer's office in our existing administration building. Festival payments will be operable after the treasurer's department relocates to 900 Concourse for at least a minimum of 1 year after the move. The food court in that building, there's ongoing conversations relative to a food court for the county employees to be operated by private entities. The idea is to start small with a limited breakfast and lunch menu and hours of operation to gauge, which would be determined by the desirability and feasibility of the food court. I will work with Elevate for the search for food court operators. Gym, a separate gym entrance has been added to the design of the remodel plans. The new entrance will be for county employees that do not work in this particular building. County employees will have access to the gym via their key card, and also they will have to pay a minimum monthly fee, which will offset any maintenance and repairs of the equipment in the gym area. Judge Robert Gruninski will replace Honorable Judge Craig Fifey, who will be retiring in June of 2024. I'm assuming that Robert will be part of the building committee as Judge Fifey has been in the past. March 28th, City County. Updates on county projects were discussed. Much discussion on Elkville Road and the jurisdiction. Jason was concerned about the current DOE assessment appeals at the city level. They are very time-consuming and do not appear to be effective in the way that they're being currently conducted. Is there a better way, such as State Statute 101166, which would be Consolidated Board of Equalization Authorized Membership? At a city level, it would appear that each appeal is rubber stamped for approval before it heads to the County Board of Commissioners for the Board of Adjustment. With House Bill 1229 being approved, new discussions between Pennington County, Box Elder, and Rapid City will be necessary to discuss future plans for roads and streets affected by the new legislation. That's all I got.
Thanks, Ron. Ms. Hadcock?
Yes, to add to the Pennington County housing and redevelopment, we did have also Mayor Mary Williams came to spoke about Prairie Village and the concerns on Prairie Village. Been working with Brian and his staff and the emergency services there to see what we could provide. Some of the solutions that we're finding is what we can and can't do based on HUD policy. So we're trying to educate Mary on some of that, and then also try to find some of the solutions that we can do for walls. So Mary is a very good person to visit with. She is a person that likes finding solutions for her city, and as a board, I think we do really well at that. So with Brian at the helm, I think that will happen, and some of it, like I said, based on HUD policy, I think she's getting a better understanding. I missed the Healthcare Trust Board. I had another meeting at the time. One of the community members that needed some help. That was pretty important. That deal should be happening April 7th that we're arranging, but at this time I need more information on it. I'm only running a piece of that. So, and also we went to the Fairgrounds annual meeting. That's when they thank the outgoing members and introduce the new people, and they tell a little bit about themselves that are going to be on the Fairgrounds board. And that's always a good meeting, and the food is always great, and the camaraderie is always great. So I appreciated that they invited us, and they do every year, and what the Fairgrounds does for us. So Jerry Cope is retiring from the president of that board, and boy, he was just a really good leader and very good communicator, so I'm going to miss him. Thank you.
I have the planning commission, which we just went through all their stuff. You know, I think the highlight of the planning commission was the discussion of the VRBOs. And they wanted to get some more input and more time to look at it. So that's why they recommended continuing it on. Compensation committee meeting. Big discussions, you know, progress on the wage survey. The comparables that they're using is Box Elder, Lemire County, Colorado, Lawrence County, Lincoln, Minnehaha, City of Rapid Cities, Sarpy County, Nebraska, State of South Dakota. They discussed some progress on light cast mark analysis. They do have some work sessions that they're going to do with the wages coming forward, so they've got 2 more of those working sessions. And they discussed how they'd met with every commissioner to go over how they've done the wage study so far by putting the pay bands in. We're talking about the professional, the technical support, public safety, and medical. And again, it was stressed that during these bands, it's about the position, not the person. So they all pretty much understood that, and or they do understand it. So they're working. They've got that pretty much worked through. The other meeting that I've attended was the Complete Health Center board meeting, and that's what I called. That was I would call it a federal audit. Wouldn't you say, Travis? The federals were coming in to audit their financials and operations for Complete Health.
Yeah, there you go. I was reading something and I didn't quite catch what you were saying there for a second. Yes.
Yeah, so it was pretty much not. So the whole board met with this team out of Washington and answered any questions that they had. A lot of it had to do with how is the board getting their information, how many members they have on it, you know, what are they gets brought up and how are they informed and so forth, and the makeup of their commission. So it went really well. It was about an hour and a half audit process. The other thing I attended was the Hill City meeting. That was very enlightening. A lot of people there, a lot of discussion. I'd have to admit that you know, the residents, you know, their concerns are warranted, and they're looking for some answers. One of the biggest comment that I heard come out of the audience was a gentleman that was talking about taxes, and then he admitted that he thought the most fairest tax out there, and these are his comments, was the sales tax. You know, his comments were, you know, you can control how much you spend, your purchases, you can, all that, and he thought that was more fair than property taxes. So I just thought I'd share that. That was one comment, and he didn't get booed out of the room. So, you know, that was a good meeting. It was a tough meeting, but it was a well attended standing room only. So, with that, I also attended the fair board meeting, and you guys have already reported on that. So that went very well. So with that, that's my report.
Mr. Chair.
I've got something too. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was going to point out at the Hill City meeting, Shannon made it very clear to the audience that if you don't like the county's budget, come to our hearings. We never have anybody actually come to our hearings. We're here, and nobody's in the audience. So the reporter for the Hill City Prevailer said, you know, if you give me the dates that you're going to have your budget hearings, we can at least get them in the Hill City Prevailer, which would then let people come and find out what services they don't need so that we can cut the budget.
Yeah.
But Shannon highly encouraged that, and so hopefully this year we'll get a little more people in the audience to give us direction.
Yeah. Deb?
So we also met on the wage descriptions, not being about the person, about the responsibility. I thought Carol did a really good job on those. Joe was there from Highway Department, Travis, and Sheriff Mueller. I'm in favor of doing it about the person and not the do the job responsibility, not the person, which we've been trying to do through Condrey, through Gallagher, and now through the department heads. And I told them this. The only problem with that is what happens, politics get into play, and we've seen it over and over again. The changes aren't happening out front, they're happening behind the scenes. So they said they would try not to have that happen anymore, but that's politics. So what's happening a lot of times, if you ever see Condrey, if you've ever been on the city council, if you've ever been on the Gallagher study, it was all the same goal. And I agreed with Carol. I thought it was an easy way to make it about the job description and not the person. So I thought that was a good step forward. So I want to see what's coming next on the comparables. But it's not wholly the Condrey study or the Gallagher study. It has to do with what happens up here after it gets done. I've been in politics 16 years, and I keep saying, it's not usually the Gallagher, the Condrey, or even with the department heads have worked very, very hard on this study, or the wage descriptions, or the wage comparables and the market analysis, and what happens with it after that. So we've seen today we had an exception to the change or whatever exceptions, but a little too late. Those things need to stop being done in the back. They need to be in public. And if you do that, you'll have more of an understanding. We've been trying to say this over and over again. The public would have more of an understanding of what's going on with the DBM changes or even anything to do with the jobs here in Pennington County. We have a great bunch of employees. We got great department heads, but some of that needs to be, to me, just more transparent in the back. So if that happens, or not in the back, transparent so it's not in the back, I think that's going to make this a whole different ball game if that happens with this new Lightcast market analysis and the wage comparables, or with the job descriptions and things changes. If that happens, you'll have success. If it continues to go where it did before on the other studies and the other wage comparables and market analysis, it'll be the same. And I just am hopeful in one sense, and the other, I've been in here 16 years, and it all plays in the politics of it. So I would hope that we wouldn't stop in September. That's why I didn't voted. You should never do job exceptions and excessive increases behind closed doors. Thank you.
I just got to make a comment. You know, normally it would have been an executive session for what the sheriff brought forward with clerical errors, and it was brought forward face value. All clerical errors, it's a misunderstanding.
Point of order.
No, I need to.
I'm going to say my point of order. That's not true. Those were never to be brought up even on an agenda. Those are done from the auditor's office, and they were never needed to be here. So he did it because of transparency. I'm saying my point. Can I finish?
You didn't let me finish.
I know, but I said point of order because you're not telling the truth.
No,
those are
you're
job.
not telling the truth.
No, those are not. I beg you to look it up.
Okay.
I asked before I brought it up, so you're wrong.
No. Okay.
So look it up, Lloyd. I appreciate it.
Moving forward,
Look it up.
let's go. Apparently I can't speak my piece. So next we come into approval of the vouchers for $297,342.84. We have two motions. We have somebody who's getting some money from, no, hold on. We need Motion one would be to approve the vouchers for the Rose Inn LLC in the amount of $220 with Adcock abstaining.
So moved.
I abstain.
Moved by Laster,
Second.
second by Ross Connect. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Everybody approved, one abstention. Motion number two would be to remove the remaining vouchers of $297, $122.84.
Second.
Moved by Drew, seconded by Lassiter. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next, on our agenda is executive session for a personnel issue per SDCL 1-25-2-1, Annual Conference of Commissioners and Director of Equalization, and one other item.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Laster, seconded by Drews. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Move to come out of executive session.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Laster.
I'd make a motion to hire an outside attorney for personnel issues at the rate not to exceed $250 an hour.
Second.
Moved by Laster, second by Adcock. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry. Discussion, Mr. Drews.
I just want to say that I don't favor this for what we're talking about. I would potentially favor this for instances in the future, but not for this. So I'm going to be voting no.
Okay. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries with one no.
Mr. Chair, move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Laster, seconded by Ross Connect. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.